I'm an ordinary man, nothing special, nothing grand. I've had to work for everything I own. I never asked for a lot, I was happy with what I got. Enough to keep my family and my home. Now they say the times are hard and they've handed me my cards. They say there's now the work to go around. And when the whistle blows, the gates will finally close. Tonight they're going to shut this factory down, and they'll tear it down. I never missed a day or went on strike for better pay. For 20 years I served them best I could. Now with a handshake and a check, it seems so easy to forget. Loyalty through bad times and through good. The owner says it's sad to see the things have got so bad, but the captains of industry won't let him lose. He still drives a car and smokes his cigar, and still he takes his family on a cruise. He'll never lose. Well, it seems to me such a cruel irony. He's richer now than ever he was before. And now my check is spent and I can't afford the rent. There's one law for the rich, one for the poor. Every day I've tried to salvage some of my pride, to find some work so I might pay my way. Oh, but everywhere I go, the answer's always no. There's no work for anyone here today. No work today. No work today. I'm an ordinary man, nothing special, nothing grand. I've had to work for everything I own. I never asked for a lot, I was happy with what I got. Enough to keep my family and my home. So condemned, nice man, just an ordinary man, like thousands beside me in the queue. I watch my darling wife trying to make the best of life, and God knows what the kids are going to do. Now that we are facing this human waste, a generation cast aside. As long as I live, I never will forget. You stripped me of my dignity and pride. Set me free. Do you love me, or are Are you just extending goodwill? Do you mean me half as bad as you say? Or are you just feeling good? I've been burned before and I know the score, so you won't hear me complain. Will I be able to count on you, or is your love in vain? Are you so fast that you cannot see that I must have solitude? When I am in the darkness, why must you intrude? Do you know my world? Do you know my kind? Or must I explain? Will you let me be myself, or is your love? Well, I've been to the mountains and I've been in the wind. I've been in and out of happiness. I have dined with kings, I've been offered wings, but I've never been to impress. Alright, I would take a chance and fall in love with you. If I am a fool, you can have the night, you can have the morning too. Can you cook and sew, make flowers grow? Do you understand my pain? Are you willing to risk it all, or is your love in vain? Can you cook and sew, make flowers grow? Do you understand my pain? Are you willing to risk it all, or is your love in vain? I give thee all, I can no more, the poor the offering thee. My heart and a lute are all the store that I can give to thee. A lute whose gentle song reveals the soul above full well. Better for a heart that feels much more than lute can tell. Though love and song may fail alas to keep life's clouds away, at least 'twill make the brighter pass her gild if they stay. And Even if care at moments flings a discord o'er life's happiest shrine, all that love but gently touch the strings, 'twill all be sweet again. All that love but gently touch the strings, 'twill all be sweet again. Greetings, greetings, greetings. A triple whammy from the Shay. How you doing? I have to get my breath back. The last two weren't too lengthy. Even though the first one, probably about 3.5, 4 minutes. So a bit of exertion involved, but not too much. Get used to it. I dare say it would be a massive challenge to somebody who isn't used to it, or indeed who's never tried singing or playing an instrument and singing along, or interacting in that way. Yeah, how you doing? Hope everyone is well as usual, as well as can be expected inside the asylum, the lunatic asylum, where if you think everything is normal in a completely abnormal environment, surely that makes normal abnormal, because it's not normal to feel normal in an abnormal environment. I think we sense this as well at every hand's turn, and that's what we've been led away from all these years, is our senses. And a good job has been done indeed, right? We've been led into a world of fantasy. Everything is fantasy, and therefore everything associated with that fantasy will be fantasy as well. Once you do away with the core base assumptions, I guess, in one sense, then the house of cards falls. Everything built upon that fabrication is destined to collapse. Simple as that. It's like the ball earth is collapsed, it's dead and gone. We can declare it officially dead. Or can you kill a non-real thing? It's like saying I killed Mickey Mouse. It's silly in a way, but we can declare it officially dead anyway on the 23rd of September 2017, in these terms, in these fake terms that they've sort of given us. 2017 from what? Well, we see it's all based on, as we're told, Christ, counting up from there. But if whole swathes of time have been completely fabricated, well then you can't use that as a counting starting point. So what can you use as a starting point? Very little, you'll find out. I propose something, and I've given a context to it as well. And the minute I come to change my perspective on it, I'll surely let you know. And all that's happening is I'm learning more and more on the back of all of these things I've learned. Up until even recently, very close to solving that last piece of the puzzle in the, forgetting the name of there's a name to the puzzle itself anyway, and it's a long running one going on. I have to find that now, shit. What's the name of that puzzle? Hang on, there it is. Let me get that. Oh, I don't want that now. 1 second. Just sorry, 1 second now. It's like a specific name, There we go. It begins with a C. I should know that. I have it written down. All right, here it is. Cicada. Cicada. I'm very happy to just realize that now again, because ADA is something that's back in major significance. So the fact that that puzzle is called that means something more on me just having looked it up on Google here. So let me, I might as well get the puzzle for you now. before I hop into things. Yeah, first song there was Ordinary Man, Christy Moore, folk singer in Ireland, pretty famous around, you know, Ireland's small enough Ireland. Ireland is a small enough island. Island itself is land. So at one point we're all connected, you know. So where does, if you have a flood, if you have a piece of land and the land is flooded, right, in parts, to a big degree in some parts, and it's like that for years, do you call that island in the middle island, or is it still part of the land if you drain the water away? Of course, it's still part of the land, and within the name is the code. So it is part of land. But yeah, he was. Oh gosh. Okay. The puzzle has moved on, it seems. Let me just show you what came up and what you're listening to. Okay. This is the puzzle I was talking about. If you've been listening. So it's called a CICADA 3301 puzzle, and it's been ongoing for 7 years. I knew it's definitely intimately connected with Alice in Wonderland. I had sort of made good strides solving, or going about solving the last puzzle anyway, so I can talk about that in a bit. This is new to me now. Let me pause that there because I haven't heard that before, and it's not going to. I'm not going to leave that play. I might leave it play a bit later on to play the whole lot of it, which is 5 minutes 38 when I have a break or something, because I didn't intend on seeing that. Now I thought the old screen would come up. So obviously we moved on from the last puzzle, which is pretty close to the top as far as I can work out. So this last piece by Borges, seeing if there's any significance in the name Borges at that. So that'll be interesting just to see where that goes. Most people won't have a clue what I'm talking about, but that's okay. This is coming towards the end of it. I was saying that the last clue, you definitely had to have knowledge of Alice in Wonderland and significance and encoded meanings within Alice in Wonderland, and also associated with flat Earth as well. So yeah, I'll leave that to the side for the minute. That's all it's the puzzle I was going to referring you to, but that's changing now. So yeah, I have to have a listen to that. Is anyone interested? It's www.171141131131131.xyz, and yeah, I can talk about that later on. The last clue was pretty short as well. It had that address. I noticed it says, and it also said, oh no, it actually says it here. It's nearby 7S. Nearby approximately 7S is the name of it. This is the link. But it's called as something different. And it had the final clue, the witch is back, comma, 23 and me. So that maybe has been solved, and had a musical piece as well, which the solution to the musical piece was Mozart, who had within the musical piece, strewn within it, you had this sort of twinkle twinkle little star combination of notes. So when you look into that, then you find out about Mozart, 1, 2, 3, the ABC, the same tune. So that's telling us that these letters and numbers are interchangeable. And indeed, if you look at the title of this hangout here, or this link here, it has a string of numbers .xyz. So that's also telling us that numbers and letters are interchangeable. And yeah, I can go in. I will talk about that later on. The witch is dead was the clue. 23 and me. And yeah, just when I thought there wasn't much more to the puzzle, there's a little bit more, but it all seems to be sort of connecting and culminating around just a little bit more. So it's not quite finished yet. So I look forward to seeing. And I haven't. All I've done is I haven't relied on the research of anybody really. When I looked up Google, and I know it's probably ongoing in forums or anything, but when I looked up a Google search, the last entry was April 19 or something like that this year. So that's like 6 months ago. And I wasn't even aware of Alice in Wonderland and the significance then. So that's the only sort of outside search I did, but I didn't find much. Some guy recognized the Twinkle Twinkle part of the musical Clue, and that was it though. So whether someone solved it or not, or whether there's a timeline, who knows? But I definitely made strides on it. The Witch is Dead, again, 23 and me. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So let me get back to, so that's interesting, just to remember that. Yeah. Ordinary man. Oh, sure. I must get the lyrics. I'm an ordinary man, nothing special, nothing grand. I had to work for everything I own. And I'm going to go through them actually, but it was from Christy Moore back in the times where actually a lot of people were out of work in Ireland. And to have even an ordinary wage became a privilege almost. All controlled and contrived from the very get-go. Everything, our whole lives are controlled and contrived by the same people who never experience any hardship or poverty. All their backs are well scratched and looked after. But let them at it. There's a greater game at play here, and I think mostly the more you go towards the material side of things, the more you're sort of, a twisted view you have of things, that we are the product. The people that live in flesh and blood, man and woman and child especially, are the product. And the customer, we buy and sell ourselves. I don't know. This is how it's become, and the distinction is a far cry from how everything used to be distinguished. We're told a pack of lies in terms of actual history. So we can't go there to get our reference or foundation. Or where can you go? You have to decide yourself in terms of your own history. Even most things in our own lives, we were false witnesses to, or we would have been, or we still are for the most part. It's very hard to find out what is meaningful in my life. What outside of all of the illusion, where does the value lie? Where does the truth lie? This is the thing. And when you find out pretty much everything is illusion, everything is manufactured, makes it all the harder to take. There is genuine hardship stemming from all of everything. Everything could be absolutely fundamentally different. Maybe that's what we're getting towards. Maybe a lesson is to be learned. Maybe this is the purpose of this experience, and a smaller part in a greater whole it is. But I mean, I was talking with Del earlier on, and just to expand a little bit on, well, let me just go to the other songs. That Ordinary Man. So talking about the plight of the worker, and that constant, the struggle and constant distinction between classes, if you will. Everything is reversed. If you ever seen that movie, Aristocrats, I guess you should, because it's funny, right? Everyone in the show business, in the stardom, search for stardom business, knows about it. So it's behind the funniness, behind the humor, dark and sick humor in a lot of senses. There's a truth being told, and everyone knows about it, and this is how they can express that truth. And I guess in one sense they're a horror at knowing certain truths. There is a hierarchy involved, and when you get involved in materialism, when you get involved in the world of illusion, you're always going to meet this deception, because from the very foundation it's illusion, and there's a purpose behind the illusion. For me now, I see it as it's a temptation. Temptation away. You have to be tempted in life. Whatever may have happened, you have to be tempted to see which route you take, the material versus the spiritual. We know in our hearts, the truth is written in our hearts. We all know it, I think, at a very core level. Everything then is just straying from that pure and core truth. And maybe that's the point and the challenge of all this in the first place. I have definitely come to see that there is interwoven in the script we call life, there is this greater narrative and a greater maze to be followed, if you so will. If you so will. If you so will. If you so will. That doesn't sound quite right, but I'll say it again just to make sure. If you so will. And if you choose to do that, then clues are waiting for you. The pathway is laid out. Where does it end? Ask yourself the basic questions. What questions did you ask as a child? Can you think back to I've spoken about this before, and I try to be honest at all times, so it's my best recollection and my best ability to put across how I remember the experience, if you will. I remember right back to when I was lying in a pram, and I, as I best I can put it across, and I've put it across before. I just sort of snapped into being, and looked around and had the thought. So I remember having the thought, where am I? I didn't say, where the fuck am I? I was just like, where am I? And what's going on? I remember looking over, seeing clear and distinct things, looking up into the corner of a room. And I have lots of subsequent memories after that, but that must have been, I can't say how early it would have been, but I'm saying a few months anyway. It can't have been a few years. So that sort of time scale. So it could have been an early few months. It could have been 2 months. It could have been 6 months. Something like. But I'd put it towards the earlier, because I also ran it by my mother that I had this memory. It was a reality, of wherever I was lying down. I used to look out the window, and whatever gates, factory gates or I thought it was a coal yard gate. But whatever the way they used to close at night. Or close the day. I didn't know at the time. Just finish the day, so I didn't know what was going on. But the way the two gates came together, there was a weird shape, and immediately I thought of the devil. Right now, how I would have, known about this sort of stuff, and there was a fear attached to it. So I remember not wanting when I went to lie down, or when I was put to lie down, not wanting to see the gates closed. If they were open, that was grand. If they were closed, then this sort of, you can imagine it, innocuous enough on both sides. But the setting is a reality, I later found out. But then the gates coming together, whatever design, had this pretty sinister looking face in it, and I associate it with the devil. Just the devil was the thought at the time, literally the devil. And it was only after however many experiences with it both closed and open, I remember a few anyway, that I came to the conclusion that the devil is nothing to be scared of. I just remember having this thought, devil is nothing to be scared of. Anyway, I was saying this to my mother, and I said, what age was I? I must have been like 3 or 4, because I remember looking out. She said, you couldn't have been looking out that window at that time, because the bedrooms were in a different area altogether. And I said, well, I have that clear memory. She said, well, look, this can't be true, but when you were in the pram very early on, I used to leave you by a certain spot. So unless it was then, but that was way too young. You know what I mean? So that's the best I can do, but I have those clear and distinct memories. So that's what we need to sort of get back to. If everything is just a learning process, I couldn't have had these thoughts. I can't see how I could have had these thoughts. So I think we come into it all knowing, and then it's like we find ourselves in well, it is an asylum. Your mom and dad think everything is normal, even though everything is far from normal. Just reflecting back on that Ordinary Man song, there was really hard times in Ireland. There really was. There's no doubts about it, and I think a lot of maybe Americans might be able to relate to that. More so, the English and the Scottish would be able to relate to that more so as well. So yeah, that's hard times. Children going hungry at the end of the week, waiting for the wages to come in. So yeah, as young, all-knowing beings, we come in, and our whole reality our reality remains intact because it's always with us, but our perception of reality, this bubble that's built for us, completely fabricated from the very get-go. If your parents knew the truth, that maybe people who are listening now, imagine your grandparents knew what you knew. Think of your own grandparents' story. The thing about all of this is that's about as far as most of us can go back. Your great-grandparents, if you're lucky, your great-great-grandparents. Very seldom you'll meet somebody who was born in, let's say, even 1850, which you might think is a long time ago, but your grandparent, if they were still alive anyway, would have been born in the 1900s, let's say, a little bit later. And so it would have been their grandparents. So it would have been a direct line there. I did speak to a man about the Irish famine, and he was an older man himself, coming in maybe mid-80s, and he remembered his grandmother telling him about the famine. But again, that's as close as you can get. All and any records are manufactured, are wiped out for the most part, or in the process of being wiped out. That's what all of this civil service is all about. Gradually changing history, but history is from the get-go manufactured. So let them change it away. We're getting a glimpse into true history in one sense. More importantly, we're getting a glimpse into ourselves, because these are the very people who take an oath for the most part to serve you. So remember, you are not the name. When you think you're the name, they let you think that you're the name. When you know you're not the name and realize that is a legal vessel, you're not going to claim to be a legal vessel. You can use it, right? But you can understand the real interplay that is going on here. Remember, you're the authority. You're not wearing any suit. The civil servant, she's not, or he, they're not there in the capacity of a friend or a confidant. No, they're in a role to serve the man or the woman. So they're wearing a suit. So they're subservient to you. And again, once you know yourself and you can make that distinction, then you can see real changes in your life, depending on what you want. What is life? What is real becomes the biggest question these days. That just reminded me of Aeon. Aeon was on whenever the last chat was. So that was a good chat, and a bit sort of a bit. I don't mean that Aeon in that sense, but a lot of stuff sort of requires expanding upon. And when you talk, as you know yourself as well, you're trying to crunch many different ideas into as short a sentence as possible. And sometimes you end up waffling, and sometimes you end up sort of not getting to any point at all, because it's as I repeated the last time, it's convoluted. It's not complex. Everything is convoluted rather than complex. So there is a pathway through it, and I suppose as you go through it, if you decide to take on that pathway, then you have your trusty, what I was going to say, machete in your hand, but the pen isn't mightier than the sword, right? The penis, but you know, that's about all you need, really, isn't it? Moving forward, it's a pathway that's laid out for you, and as with anything, flat Earth is that foundation stone. I think anyway. So once you get to flat Earth, then you're on a firm footing. Because remember, flat and stationary is always known. This is just a gimme. People who know these things know that Einstein was married to a butch man and think it's very funny. You know, Einstein, one stone, yeah, monolith is one stone. Lith is, it translates as stone, and mono is one. Well, I put the three together. Hitler was born on 4/20, April 20, and had one testicle or one ball or one stone, all telling the same story. And that story is there to be decoded. You can rest on flat Earth and stationary Earth if you want, but I don't think that sort of level of curiosity. Is my nose crooked? Is that? I fell on my nose. Fell on my nose, and I can still sort of move it around a small bit. There's no crunching or anything. So if it was crooked, I could sort of like put a little bit of pressure on this side, and there it will stay. I have to have a better look at that. Now it's better. Yeah, it's all straight now. Yeah, so there was some greater story has been told here. This one stone or one ball instead of a bi-ball, and it's there to be decoded. A lot of it is connected together when you do get to flat Earth. So if there's flat Earth is just the beginning, and you take it from there. And there's plenty of hurdles always along the way. I mentioned this last time, and I was thinking about it a little bit. Alex Jones is still there, you know, open arms, open-mouthed, waiting for the people who are just fresh to conspiracy world again. And if the numbers are ever growing, ever expanding, then he's going to welcome more and more in. I think this is sort of the eternal cycle in one sense, or the natural way of it. And it's sort of funneling people in, welcoming at the door and scaring the living shit out of them. Then you move on, you work your way through, cast aside the different gatekeepers, and make your way to where you, well, potentially where you're at this minute. Hopefully you don't sort of follow anybody. Hopefully you don't, you know, tie your horse to any man's post. But that's not, who am I to tell you where to tie your horse, right? But yeah, at this stage, I think we will have moved through it all. And as I was saying to Del earlier on as well, it takes years to make any good friendships, and a lot go by the wayside in general. And you know, we have to accept this is a new sort of a media as well, so it's easy to attach yourself to a bunch of people, and then sort of having slowly but surely going along with all the ideas, getting into these unwritten and unsaid rules, you know, and before you know it, then you don't like it, but you can't do anything about it. Don't let that happen to any, you know, for anyone's sake, really, because this is what it's all about. I say you can't leave one system and join a new system, and especially when you realize that there was systems there waiting for you. There was Alex Jones's equivalent waiting for you in flat Earth to collect lots of Bible channels popping up, and they all go hand in hand. So if you're banned from one, you're probably banned from them all, and there's no questioning Bible literalists or literalism. There's no talking or asking about, you know, through all the conspiracy seas you've swam, did you not come across the Jesus didn't exist conspiracy as a living man, and the history as applied as manufactured? No, that's, you just can't mention that. That's crazy talk, even after coming through all the rest. So again, there's something else wrong here, and that's another system you're being tempted The temptation never ends, you see, because if you're a greater being, you know all the shit he's laying. So you're always to be guided by your heart and your top of your head, the D. Everything is pointing upwards. So that's what, that's another breakthrough, and that's a pretty exciting one. It's close enough to the top. After I found one template with the moon and the Milky Way, so you're looking at a template there, if you will, and another template presents itself as well. So the rest, just as the rest, as without so within, just as the rest of the sky and the heavenly luminaries can be traced back to the template itself. It's the same with all the words and letters, all the letters and the numbers that we use. You probably know from before that each number, Adam, A4, I was saying it to A4. A4 is A, D is the fourth letter, so you have A, D. That's pretty important. D is the marble arch. D is your head. It's the marble arch here. So it's all about figuring out what's going on without, and then figuring out what's going on within. So this is a template was found for without. In terms of the moon, here we're looking at the interface of the sun. That's the best way I can put it. I put it in different terms before, and then as we look at the stars as they rotate, as you look at the moon, you're looking at a reflection of this interface. Look, the sun itself is a reflection of a projection from the North Center. So the moon is a reflection of a reflection. We can't see the face of the sun or on the sun because it's too intense. This is where we can see it with the full moon. And the sun is neither hot nor cold, it's an intense frequency. And it's that which, it's water everywhere in its particulate form. And it's this energy, when introduced, disturbs the water particulates in all its forms, and also we're under a magnetic field, so it disturbs that field. And yeah, so that, just as the moon is a template for the rest of the luminaries we see in the sky, also is this, what I found, the template for all the letters that we use and for all the numbers that we use as well. That's what I was saying about Adam, A4. Yeah, he talked about how each number, 1 to 10, 1 to 9, when mirrored and reversed and overlaid on the original, will give you an 8. So that makes sense. Just think in terms of a digital clock. It's easy. You have 2 numbers that don't. That's 0 and 1. And 11 in gematria is left standing, you know, as a double digit in general. So all this is significant, and it all ties into, as I said, this other template. And I might go through that tonight, just because it's sinking a bit more, and you can see it everywhere. Then once I show it to you, you'll be able to see it everywhere, and it indeed connects everything to this grander story that's been told. And ultimately, that is the story. There's 2 concurrent stories. One is the external one. Well, where am I? What the fuck is going on? Can I get a grasp on the physicality of everything? If I could go high enough, what would I see? You know, this sort of thing. Because we can all agree and we can agree on very few things, but we all can agree in one sense. I mean, if I met you, we'll agree that there's a reality to the setting, right? How to define the setting? Well, we might vary as much as chalk and cheese from where we're coming from. Some people have the audacious idea that they're living on a spinning ball. How crazy is that? Against all of their lifelong trustworthy, otherwise trustworthy senses, they convince themselves that they're moving not only at minor speeds, but major speeds, and in a circle to boot. The worst type of movement that you're most susceptible to being affected by. The ballers often talk about, we can feel the acceleration, we can't feel the movement because it's constant. There's no acceleration, it's a constant velocity. So since there's no backdrop to compare it to, we can't feel the movement. So there's that illusion of absolute stillness. But when you remind them, when you ask them, well, how come you can't feel the acceleration? If there was acceleration, would you feel it? And generally they'll say, yes, you would. Well, I remind them of the definition of acceleration, which is a change in velocity or direction. So if a ball is spinning at said speeds, and most especially if around itself, most especially around the sun, not to mind the sun, whatever the speeds the sun is doing, because it's described in your theory by circular motion, this is what we would be most susceptible to feeling, because the acceleration is constant. It's constantly changing. Again, acceleration is defined as a change in velocity or a change in direction. If you're going 30 miles per hour along the motorway, that's fine. You're going in a straight line. If you maintain your velocity but change your acceleration, you can still be going 30 miles an hour, but no longer you're going east. You're taking a roundabout turn to go back west where you came from. But you can still take the roundabout at 30 miles an hour, and you will feel that. If you don't believe me, try it. Only fools don't slow down at roundabouts, right? Yeah, so usually then you get it, well, it's a constant acceleration. Well, that makes it worse. So it's constantly changing direction. So from one moment to the next, there's a constant change. You will definitely feel that as a sequence of instantaneous accelerations. 12 hours after you're 12 hours, you could be fucking space sickness. I mean, Jesus. 12 hours after you're going fucking zooming in one direction, you're going around and you're going immediately in the opposite direction. Your stomach wouldn't have a chance. What about your ear? What about your the fluid in your ears? That's what I say about the ISS nonsense. I mean, how would the fluid in your ear work? How would it know which way was down or up? After a while, you can make allowances for a little bit, the Bonnet Comet or whatever, but you can be sure disorientated for a while. But how would it work under those constant weightlessness, apparent weightlessness conditions, and that gross acceleration as you're spinning and falling? How a nonsense an ocean. I've often said that the ISS is as a joke. It's all a joke, waiting for you to get it. This is it. You get the joke when you realize that all the people who are perpetrating the joke know the Earth is flat and stationary. They know it. So they've been hinting to you, they've been waiting for you to get it. Now, yeah, let's move on to the next questions, which are there. But yeah, you can easily confound any arguments at this stage, and it's not even based on one argument alone you might have with someone defending a ball position. Generally, you'll find that they hold a few, once you get talking to them, a few very strange, incongruous points of view about other, let's say, conspiracies, chemtrails, or that sort of thing. JFK, 9/11, that sort of thing. Generally, you find that the ball earthers are all official story people, anti-conspiracy crew members, status quotitioners, and that gives their game away as well. So you understand that they're playing a role here, and you move on from there. Don't get emotionally involved, and you sort of move on in your own path. And I say there is a path waiting for you. All your favorite musicians are pointing you to the same place, which is Alice in Wonderland. I don't care who it is, any level of fame or success over the last 50 years, pretty much, maybe from the start. Well, before that, maybe the 50s. Yeah, 50s would be good. The start of the 50s, even though it was always infiltrated music-wise. But yeah, they'll all point you to one or two things: Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band or Alice in Wonderland more directly. And it's a kind of a note to you to pay attention. And when the time comes and you start to put pieces together, then you might pay attention and then go looking where they're all pointing you to. Because it's sort of important, wouldn't you say, if just think of your top three favorite bands. I dare any of you out there, top favorite three bands from the whatever. I'm 45, so from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that sort of thing. Anything up to today is fine. Even Tom Petty recently popped his clogs. I think he exited stage left. It's just his time to the character to go. So there's probably something to be learned from his death story, but I guarantee you there's something pointing you to Alice in Wonderland. He's already pretty famous for his interpretation of Alice in Wonderland in one of his own songs. So yeah, they're all pointing you to take another look at it. And it encodes the truth. This is the idea. This is why it's listed as, the works of Lewis Carroll are listed as, after the Bible and the works of Shakespeare, the most printed earthwide materials in history. So we have the Bible, works of Lewis Carroll, and works of Shakespeare, and I maintain they're all written by the same hand. And I have sort of nice, strong connections and threads to support that in my own brain anyway, which I've moved on and forgotten most of them. But yeah, I maintain a completely different history is before you, and woven into it has been great truths of her existence here, or experience here. And once you can recognize this, that there is a greater truth to be gleaned, and take the right steps, small steps, if you're interested. This is the point. There's so many divisions of people, you know what I mean? We talk about I don't talk about the sheep, but we all called people sheep before, you know what I mean? But we're all sheep. As I've sort of made the equation, you have some black sheep, you know, most sheep are white, just to keep the analogy going. But, you know, once you get a big enough population, then you find that, hang on, we're going to have some place to put all the black sheep. So you get maybe a 10, a 17, one in 17 sheep is a black sheep. Now, more than that, probably one in 30, 1 in 50, who knows, whatever. But the more the sheep you gather, the more black sheep will amass. So then you have to build a separate compound for the black sheep. Now, within the black sheep, over time, and as things go, yeah, you're going to get, I don't know, black sheep with half black, half white, half caste, or tranny sheep or something, you know. So, well, half black, half white, and yeah, then you're going to have a little pen for those. So yeah, you can see how it goes into a never-ending spiral in one sense, defined by the Fibonacci sequence. But yeah, the idea is to not be put into any pits, or not pits, independence, not into any pens or enclosures yourself, and remain utterly and singularly independent in all things. That's the idea, because at every step of the way, there is a challenge, and there is a hurdle, and there is an aid, and there is a clue. So yeah, you have to know where to start, though, and that's where flat Earth comes in. Without flat Earth, none of it can make any sense. But with flat Earth, a lot of it can make sense. So this is all about decoding, and yeah, it's not as difficult as you might think. That's all I'd say. It's just not. You just have to be. You have to be. I'm not sure if you're in. Yeah, I suppose you have to be interested. You can't. For me, you can't get to a certain point and then just go, well, I thought it was to a certain point, and said, well, there's not much to go beyond here. But then there is, like, you know, then there's always a reason. Otherwise, I think it would be all pointless, and it's not all pointless. It's not all pointless at all, even though it does seem that it could very well be. Even flat Earth is no consolation in some senses there. It sort of confuses matters a lot more, I should think, for a lot of people. But what can you do? You deal with it or you don't. You deal with the truth of it, consequences of it, the implications of it, or you don't. And I think, well, now is the time, maybe now is always the time But yeah, maybe that's what's been waited upon as well. You, um, yeah. Who's the authority here? Who stands up and claims authority? You know, who is everybody subservient? Why are things the way they are? Why do you have to do this? Or who is telling you to do that? If you look for answers generally, you'll find that it's just nobody. It's 1984 is an allegory. You know, we don't be taking any of these things literally. It's an allegory of the fight within. And I think if you have different eyes, you can see through it, and you can look at it in a different way. Those many layers coded into all of these things. Take the literal meaning. Yeah, you're falling for the Alex Jones sort of level. So there's always more to the story, and that greater story is not being hid. Really, it's there to be discovered, and I'm sure there are many different ways of discovering it. But this particular way, it spans, well, as best as we can guess, hundreds of years now. It was a live puzzle when the Beatles and Sergeant Pepper came out, Sergeant Pepper's. So that puzzle still remained live, and there's probably still some of it live, but for the most part, it's solved. So that was 50 years. That was referenced back to Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass, which was 150 years ago. So that's, it's a fine span of time. I say Lewis Carroll didn't exist, and this is just part and parcel of this greater puzzle, greater unraveling, unfolding. The future was always written, the past, we can be quite uncertain of the past. The future has always been written, and it's been laid out for us. And yeah, I was going to say we're not there yet. No, we're not, but we're getting there. We're getting there, and I think everyone, the masses, are going to wake up. Everything is going to be different, but in the meantime, yeah, those who have sort of questioned things a lot more beforehand, this is there to be discovered as well. I'm not sure of the grander game, but all this stuff is starting to make sense, and I think it would have been virtually impossible without all these wonders of technology, all this information at our fingertips, and red herrings, to be sure, but the truth's still out there. And the more I look at it, the more I see that everything is really in plain sight. From the anarchy logo, I was thinking of pure anarchy, and the reason he chose that logo, well, I see why he does it now. AD, so D is the marble arch, A is the apex, so it's about, it's all about frequency and vibration. We live in a broken system. The sun's energy itself is a frequency. It's how it interacts with the atmosphere, again, just to use the terms, with the water particulates, as we say atmosphere. This is where you get where you get the variation. And remember, we're under a magnetic field holding back the waters beyond. We're in a broken system, so we're under that in position. And as the sun comes along and excites the particulates, it also cleaves a path through this magnetic field, which it overcomes easily enough, and gives its enriching energies, I suppose, in its various forms. We experience that form as heat for the most part, or lack of. But remember, above the cloud layer, above the particulate layer, the sun is still that frequency and that energy. That's where you get the moon, because it's above any of this atmospheric interference, and the sun will shine out in all directions. But in one particular direction, you're getting a direct reflection. That's when you see the moon. And the moon is just a reflection of the interface of the sun, which is itself a reflection of energies emanating from the north center. And this is all told as well. This is the thing. It's all told throughout Alice in Wonderland. The solution to that puzzle is stars, and we're reminded everywhere of stars. And I think the idea being that if you can understand the stars with flat Earth in mind, then you can sort of understand everything. That's everything without, in one sense, put to bed. Then how does that connect within? That is a different, but a connected, interconnected bridge. So as without, so within for a good reason, and as above, so below for good reason as well. And yeah, not everyone. I mean, I'm thinking what to do. Who can you aim anything at? No, you can't aim anything at anybody. This is all before all. This is before us all. You know, all this information. We're sort of hit with it from all sides, and it's a matter of just understanding the context and understanding the interconnection, especially between letters and numbers. And the power in numbers, 666, is nothing to be scared of. It's nonsense to be frightened of a number or a construct itself. It's like being frightened of Mickey Mouse, you know, but it's what Mickey Mouse might represent. Well, I don't mean that in any sinister way, but of course there's a lot of sinister associations alleged associated with much in Hollywood, and we don't need to go there for the minute. But yeah, it's the same with numbers and letters. It's what they represent, and understanding and a knowledge of what they represent, as opposed to what most people misunderstand their true representation. It's therein lies the power, and therein lies the ability for spellcraft. I mean, a spell is the creation of an illusion to pull the wool over some participants' eyes, if you will, you know, to perform some sort of trickery and bring into perceived existence something that otherwise is not. I talked about the importance of the word "is," both in terms of a vibration and also in a philosophical sense, against the backdrop of flat Earth, created realm, creation. So against that backdrop, so if we have the potential ability to bring into, or to create, to bring into existence via our vibration, fundamental vibration, which comes obviously from a thought first of all, an association. If we have that ability, then we have to be very careful in terms of what we attach the word and the intention is to. And the more you think about that, then the more sense it can make. You know, we have to remember that all the language that we use is crafted, and if the adversary, if you will, has done the crafting, and they use that as a form or means of communication between them, well then, you know, it serves you well to understand this, and you can sort of get to interpret things in a different way then. So that's where the true power in words or letters lie. It's, you know, they put the scarers on you in terms of 666, or they get the willies up here, you know, the devil's number, or the omen with the 13 and all this. Yeah, take you away from the true meaning. And I think the true meaning is all about telling us the real story of ourselves and the real story of our home, Earth. And to me, it's clearer than ever. I don't need to go back and read, or maybe I will as well, but I don't need to go back and read Alice in Wonderland or Alice Through the Looking Glass again, because it's in my brain now, and I've seen the version where Disney, the most expensive cartoon up to that point, I think, and it took years to make in terms of, I think it was 1951 production. But they combined the two books, Alice in Wonderland with Alice Through the Looking Glass, and Jesus, it's loaded. I looked at that after reading, but it's loaded with clues, and it more so because it's a combination of both. So they've picked out what they deem to be the very important parts, and put them front and center, and that becomes abundantly clear as well. And just the big deal made about these two books over the last century, or since they've been written, especially in terms of the narrative. I will tell you that there's more to be listened to here, if you're so inclined. I was thinking about Aleister Crowley, and I've left. Oh yeah, one thing I was just going to say. Right in they did include the dodo for a prominent role, and there he is on the back of a crow. It looks like a crow or sort of not a pelican, a pecan or a toucan, as he's looking for land, and he's singing, "A sailor's life is a life for me." Hang on, I wrote that down. I thought it was funny. Oh, sailor's life is a life for me. Oh, sailor's life is a life for me. How I long to sail on the boundless sea. And I never, never, ever did a thing about the weather. The weather never, ever did a thing for me. Okay, let me try that again. A sailor's life is a life for me. How I long to sail in the boundless sea. And I never, never, ever do a thing about the weather, because the weather never, ever does a thing for me. Yeah, I learned that. That's what he's singing. And I said the dodo represents the face of the flat earth. So how appropriate that is once you have the certain context for it. But no, the movie itself, very informative. Combining the two books together, and again, a massive deal has been made about it, and it's been shown. I mean, the most shown or seen movies, certainly up to the end of the last century, a little bit before that, but it did come out in 1951. But yeah, much more made of it, even down to a production by the BBC, or was it Channel 4, I think. I think it was called Curiouser and Curiouser, and how very curious as well. I was looking for an anomaly, just to divert a second. I was looking for an anomaly of the same magnitude, let's put it, like I found with Alice in Wonderland. I looked up an audiobook version of Alice in Wonderland after I read it, just to see, it's one thing reading it, your attention is sort of diverted a bit. So I said I'd listen to it. So John Gielgud, world-renowned, world-famous thespian, I suppose, was reading it. And it was grand, it was going grand. I was looking forward to the dodo part, because I realised some of the significance. And looking forward to maybe an idea sparked, or something occurring that didn't occur when I was reading it myself. So yeah, chapter 2 ends, and just waiting on chapter 3, the caucus race, and very important chapter as well, in terms of what we've come to find out, but not only for us, for Lewis Carroll himself, Charles Lutwidge Dodson, who said himself that he related, out of all of the characters, he related most to the dodo, and he was said to have a stammer in terms of his own narrative. The third of 11 children, he was said to be. Lots of different, the book published in 1865, 1 and 8 is 9, 6 and 5 is 11. So when we think of 9/11, we think of the Twin Towers. No, that's not where it begins. That's far from where it begins, but it's an integral part to it. And I think I know where that is as well. That's all got to do with the template for all the letters, and it's only all I can speak for is the English alphabet, and well, ultimately it goes back to one letter, and that's in the Greek alphabet. But that's also in the English alphabet, not the Greek alphabet. Yeah, the Greek alphabet. No, what's that? Yeah, okay. I'm wondering, and I was just thinking, yeah, that is the Greek alphabet. But I suppose 0-1, they use the decimal system. What would you call that system? 0-1 decimal system, right? So I suppose all the numbers are the same, pretty much earthwide. Even though there might be different ways of doing it. Sorry, anyway. Shit. Yeah, the template. So that all goes back to this template, which defines everything. And yeah, everything is defined in terms of this illusory world by this world of illusions, by this power that these letters have and these numbers have. But if you think about it, letters and numbers are just ideas attached to vibrations. So this is where we get back to frequency and vibration. And once we know exactly the meaning behind the letters and the numbers that are presented to us and we do use on a daily basis, then we can juggle with these numbers a little bit more and find that we can understand a language that we hitherto didn't realize we were even speaking or communicating in. The production I was thinking of was the channel. I have the link there. Anyone's free to ask me, but look it up yourself. It's going to YouTube, Curiouser and Curiouser, and it's about an hour and a half movie from 1998 from Channel 4, I think. But very good, yeah, very well worth a watch. But especially for me, because knowing how encoded it was. I talked about a 13 chapter to Alice Through the Looking Glass. That was waiting to be found as well. And the significance of that can't be stressed too much. They tell us it goes in right after Alice's encounter with the White Knight, and just before she's made queen. So that's very pertinent. But yeah, not too much mention of that chapter, but yet in this 1998 production, there they have that discarded chapter put in. Sorry, so I was saying about the first Alice in Wonderland. He leaves, even though, yeah, Dodgson, he was said to have a stammer in the narrative, Charles Dodgson. So, you know, come across as Charles de Dodgson. So working that into it. So yeah, absolutely no reason to leave it out of chapter 13 on such a reading by world famous thespian, and he left it completely out. Just completely skipped chapter 3, jumped straight to chapter 4 as if nothing happened. Fuck the dodo. Fuck him. Well, the dodo abides, you know, but that's a big clue, isn't it? I mean, what possible reason could you come up with that? What, you know, what's other than, that's what I mean, other than, you know, it's by its very absence, it's roaring volumes, so it's dragging you towards chapter 3. And indeed, it is a very important chapter indeed in the history of all chapters written, even though there are more important chapters, because it doesn't end at the dodo, it goes beyond that. But yeah, I found the same anomaly in this production, an English production, and a lot of top actors in there as well, especially, you know, well, I was going to say medium actors, but a lot of well-known faces anyway. But lo and behold, they inserted this 8th chapter with their own interpretation on it into the movie itself, where, according to the book, it was discarded. So why would you insert a discarded chapter into a production of this well-known and well-loved, well unknown, I suppose, and well-loved tale? Well, there has to be a greater reason, and yeah, well, it's the greatest of reasons. So that insertion is a direct mirror of the John Gielgud exclusion. You know, I was trying to say insertion, outsertion. Yeah, outsertion. No worries. Yeah, so none of this won't make any sense to anybody, right? For the most part, but it all connects together, and I have the little template now. Pretty sure I have it, but I'm just gonna mull it over in a few different ways. I talked about the anarchy signal, or the anarchy sign, pure anarchy, and you know, the A within the circle, and we see that a lot. We can see that I know what the chevron's about as well. It explains what the chevron's about, but NASA, so with this NASA with the chevron, as they call it, and the circle. So yeah, it is a template for all languages, and I'm not sure exactly. I'm just trying to whittle it down. It's like let me put it this way: it's a minimum of 2 characters. But probably just a few more than that. It might go up to 5. It's probably 3 or 5 characters. But it's like a template, and all numbers and all letters come from that template. And literally all those characters have greater representation as applies to us. This is the only puzzle that, not the only, obviously this is not the only puzzle that's left, but for a big part, the flat and stationary Earth takes us a long way. Then we start worrying, then we start thinking about the stars. Well, once you accept that there's waters beyond, excuse me, once you accept there's waters beyond, and mirror-like conditions, we're under a magnetic field holding back the waters beyond. And when you introduce light energy, what we call light energy, then you have a mirror, a reflective, a hall of mirrors like against a contoured surface, which is moving, and then you get to see the luminary display that we observe. So yeah, once you sort of get there, you realize everything is at its core at the North Center. Then there's a whole world beyond, and I guess because it's a constant. Well, from this position anyway, we're at a sort of really low level, and this is where that template again comes in. It deals with everything, but most especially within, and everything makes sense against that backdrop. From the anarchy symbol to V from Vendetta, to the chevron in the circle, to the 9/11, to the inverted pentagram. It's all part and parcel of the same thing, telling a core story that is pertinent to us. And I suppose our division, we talked about the 666 before, representing the division. But when you connect both sides, we're part of this division, as within, so without. So when you connect these two, you get the 8, the interlocking 8, and it's all about the 8. That's one of the H. That's one of the fixed characters. Yeah, I'll hang on. I'll hang on before I describe anything absolutely. But yeah, that's what it's all about, and then it ultimately relates to, first of all, our understanding, and then to a vibration that we can set up within ourselves and get your bell ringing, your marble arch ringing. If you think of a D, there's your big clue. There's your big clue. A D, sideways, and then another D, a mirror D. What do you get? You get a theta, Theta. The S word is or the sword from the stone. The S word from the S tone is S, or TH. So it's all about the theta. And so it's two halves mirrored and reunited. And this is what we're sort of experiencing. And yeah, there's your D here, look, marble arch, and the A then is the U, your head. It's the H, the head and the heart, two H's. So it's by this interconnection via vibrations. I know what you have to do in the wasp, in the wig. Think about a W. Just you picture a W on its side. Well, mirror it, and you don't have to invert it even. Just mirror it and invert it if you want, and join the two together. You get an 8, right? So it's all about an 8. So the wasp in the wig is about combining these two separate parts to get the W, and the W the 8. Is it funny? The W is the 23rd letter. That's interesting in itself. 23 has been coming up a lot, right? We had the 23rd of September, which is 23rd of the 7th. I did the calculations for that, and it comes out as, it's when I said 23rd of the 7th, September, sept. It's called sept for a reason. Sept is 7. When you do the calculations, 23, 7. Shit, I might find out now because that was good. I've been saying it's been all about the 420. Maybe. What was the 23rd of September in 2010? 2010 added up to 10. I ended up multiplying that. I'll find it in a second now. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah, that was it. So it was the 23rd of the September was 7, right? So when you multiply all those out, 223, 2 times 3 times 7, you get 42. And in 2017, and when you add those up, in the year 2017, you get a 10. What do you get when you multiply 10 by 42? That's right, you get 420. So that was September 23rd, which I say the world officially ended the world on the September 23rd, 2017. The world being the illusion, the unreal, spinning, careering is all you can describe it as when you take a step back. Ball. Yeah, rests in pieces, although it never had a reality to begin with. So, yeah, so everything is symbolic. And that 23 number came up again, but I didn't look into it too much. The American shooting, a few interesting things. 89119 was apparently the zip code or the area code. Good to see the 8 up front. It really is good to see the 8 on the front. Stephen Paddock himself. Now that I'm on the topic, and I haven't looked into it much really, just a little. I didn't even know what the story was. Knew it was fake. Oh, it's all going to be fake. So it's symbolic in nature. But yeah, Stephen Paddock, my own son's name is Stephen. But we'd recently been talking about chapter 7. We're just talking about it again tonight in Alice in Wonderland, where the knight leaves Alice, but she reminds us that this is the most memorable experience of all her experiences, and she paid attention to the poem itself, which was called Ways and Means, which is called, also another name, Haddock's Eyes, and Sitting on a Fence, Sitting on a Gate, actually. So it's a bit confusing, but it goes through these different titles that are associated with it. And he's pointing out, obviously, the difference between the name of something, what it's called, what it goes by. He was just pointing out the spellcraft behind the words used. But yeah, when we were reminded that Alice reminded us that it had the same tune as I Give Thee All I Can and More. That's pointing us to My Heart and Lute. Just to give you the context, it's pointing us to My Heart and Lute. And again, that was Alice's greatest recollection. That's what she hung on to the most from all her experiences. Well, My Heart and Lute, second song I played tonight, I put the music to it myself. But the poem itself is said to be by Thomas More. We already talked about Behemoth and that vibration, in which is the TH is prominent at the end there. And yeah, the TH is the theta as well. So that's what we are. It's all about combining two halves that have been sundered. And yeah. So that's the 23, yeah, sorry, that was the 23 with the shooting. That's what I was getting. So Paddock, Stephen Paddock, Haddock's Eyes had been in our news anyway. Haddock's Eyes, which led us onto My Heart and Lute. My heart is the H in the center. And with this template, it says above, so below. You get a diamond as well. You get everything from it. And it's telling you exactly, you have to make this connection. And even within the wasp and the wig, he's telling us about this connection that you have to tie a handkerchief, interesting word, handkerchief, around your head. And that's only for the purposes of sort of blocking off your ears, first of all, but it's sort of allowing for that condition, the vibration, to be transmitted more effectively. That's right. It also talks about conceit and not having a stiff neck. So if you put your head down on your chest, close to your heart, then you have that sort of connection going. So ultimately, I think this is the point. When you can realize that vibration and get it to the top of the marble arch and get your head ringing, this is when you set up a literal frequency vibration that awakens whatever within you. With A on the other evening, I mean, fair play, I mean, take some resilience in one sense to go without food for 3-4 days. I think you can use, I think setting up these conditions are when this vibration can be used to a more effective manner. There are a few people talking about, oh, this might be satanic, or, well, I mean, that doesn't mean much to me anymore. Anyway, first of all, when I ask who is the Satan character, do I go to the Bible to get a grasp of his character? I don't think so. He's only mentioned a couple of times. While I'm reading it, though, I get horrified by some of the other shit that goes on. So that's even outside it, but itself, again, it's a frequency, but it's also bringing something into behemoths. We are in a process of transformation, and it's that frequency that sets up can shake us loose. I think that's how it works. And what I'm finding out about this template, as I'm going to call it, um, this is where it's all pointing to. It's all pointing to within. So it is just as the rule, as I say, is a template for without. This tells us that we're dealing with the star. We're dealing with a reflection of the interface of the sun, which is a template really that's scattering the stars according to the contour of the barrier. Then this other template is a template for within. And it's literally a frequency. That's what the sun is. It's a frequency without, which disturbs this penetrating, prevailing sort of magnetic field that we're under, because we're part of a broken system. So that's what the sun does, and it's various interactions. And yeah, we have our own frequency generating system here at our own beck and call. And by in one sense, what Ian is doing, do we need to eat? Why do we eat? How do we think about these things? What are we looking for? And so we have to sort of get past certain hurdles. Most people are still scared shitless at the thought of drinking a cup of their own piss, a cup of their own urine. I mean, you drank worse, right? You drank worse. Hold your nose. Have two glasses there. Hold your nose. Knock it back. The minute you taste the water, the taste is gone. Big deal. But in terms of its potential, well, I think it's boundless. But with a combination of all of these things, I think we can escape the chains, maybe the chains that we put upon ourselves. So I suppose on that note, I'm going to go for a cigarette, but I'm going to before I go into chat, I'm going to play that link just over the interval, and I'm going to have a listen to it. So I'll have a listen to it. I'll go into chat then and see how everyone's going. So let me just play this. Hopefully it comes through okay, and I'll share the screen. Okay, once just the beginning of 3 times there twice. I'm going to be listening to that. I'm going to be listening to that a lot more. I should, well, a bit more anyway. Wow, that was excellent, right? Very passionate, very it's the type of music I like as well. The trumpet adds great power to minor chord songs. I think that was in E minor. I'm tuned slightly different, but I'll definitely be listening to that again and even learning it. I think the best songs in one sense are the ones without words. Words, as someone who has written songs, write songs occasionally, up to the present day. I always had a problem with words and themes. I don't think I have much of a problem now with themes. I think, but I don't probably feel the need so much to express them anymore. Few songs. Let me just say, I have a few songs. I have my my dodo song. Very few words in it, and it'll just be one word actually, dodo. But I won't play that live in case I make an arse of it. So I'll just probably just record that and put that up then as a video. But yeah, that was pretty exciting, and I'm going to hold back on any impressions. Just listen to it a few more times. A few things came to mind. The end of what was it, Lord of the Rings? That's where the ring. I think I found the 9th ring, the one ring to bind them all as well. And it's pretty simple, and it's pretty in your face as well. So that's what came to mind at the very last scene when they were leaving for everything achieved, and they were leaving for paradise or wherever beyond. I can't remember the beyond the whatever, beyond the beyonds. the land where no mortal gets to go, I think, and or experience. I wonder, is that anywhere near the north, right? But that's what it reminded me of, that type of music. A bit more, yeah, sort of tense than that at times. So final battle scene maybe, but also reminded me of, and I started to read it. I think I got to one. Yeah, I only got to one chapter, which is Silmarillion, and how it talks about in the beginning was the song of God, if you will. There's not called God in it, but which is good, I think. But then you had all the different harmonies coming into place, and out of this vibration comes creations of all manners. So that's what that reminded me of as well. So I'll file that away, and yeah, even the name itself just conjures up a few points of interest. So that's interesting. Most people now won't have a clue what I'm talking about, so I better go into chat. Actually, I'll sing this. I'll sing this because it reminded me of that. This is a very important song as well, because, and it gives also, yeah, I mentioned Radiohead many times, and while I thought I understood Radiohead, where it was coming from, there's more to it than that. They're pointing us somewhere, and it all connects within this final template as well, as I'll go through the next time. But it's all about breaking words down, not looking at everything in the traditional manner. So you have a few tools at your disposal, and you have, most importantly, a context. Once you have a context, everything will be broken down and understood in its true, simple and core meaning. So let me play this, and I'm going to chat then. Well, I'll talk about it afterwards. Wine and sleeping pills, help me get back to your arms. Cheap sex and sad films, help me get where I belong. I think you're crazy, baby. I think you're crazy, baby. Stop sending letters. My letters always get burned. It's not like the movies. They fed us on little white lies. I think you're crazy, baby. I think you're crazy, baby. Beautiful angels torn apart and burned, limbless and lifeless, else, I hardly recognize you. I think I'm crazy. I think you're crazy. I want to see you in the next the story behind that song is amazing in itself. Radiohead, insider band from the get-go, and their album Kid A, just in a nutshell, their album Kid A was the soundtrack to the movie that was presented to us as live on 9/11, on the day itself, broadcast to the world. A War of the Worlds on steroids in a televisual form. The movie was pre-made, presented to us as live, and you find out later on Radiohead's Kid A was the soundtrack, and even the album title itself makes more sense now. I just said it's all about the A and the D, right? So we have Kid A, but that was made and produced and released in 2000, year 2000, yeah. But if, like The Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon, when played side by side or simultaneously, one turns out to be the soundtrack of the other. Now that's not too hard to understand with The Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, because the music came after the movie, so you could be sitting down watching the movie and then just coming up with the music. Not too difficult, not too mystical. But Radiohead Kid A, their album was released in 2000, so that conjunction there between the album as being the soundtrack, and all you have to do is just type it into Google yourself, Kid A soundtrack to 9/11. You'll see maybe not plenty of information, you'll have to see some information on it, make the judgment yourself. Anyway, that's my favorite song for years, one of them anyway. And song number 10 is X, 9, 11. You see, you have to go through 10, right? So you have 9, X is 10. That's why we have X's everywhere now. We're getting to the 11. If you think of the K, 11 and the K are the K is the 11th letter. Think of the K in terms of a H. It's a broken down H, isn't it? It's a broken down 11. Just like A is a broken down H. So you've got more emphasis at the top, which is the sign for male. So this was all about the sign for female, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and getting this balance in order. And it's something that you can practically do to achieve that balance. First of all, changing your mind about pretty much everything. And then you can do a frequency. This is, to the best of my understanding, this is, not telling anybody anything, just sharing where I'm at. You can do a frequency vibration to sort of release whatever bondages had been and restrictions had been placed upon us. But yeah, 2000, that's song number 10, and as if lots of other things weren't giveaway in this, have the name itself is motion picture soundtrack. And I remember listening to that back in 2000 pretty much, 2001, 2002 definitely. Never made a connection, but that song was always my favorite song. So that's one of the songs when you're traveling along, you sort of put on again and again. And now I see the significance to it. And Radiohead then take us on further. We find out that Tom York's nickname as a child was Dodo and Salamander. Yeah, right, Tom, after realizing the significance of Kid A and your sort of role in that, very interesting itself. Just and by the way, look into where what was the story behind Radiohead in 9/11? Where were they? They were actually doing a concert in Germany, and lots to be said about that. Very interesting. So all these little connections, but that song in itself always stuck with me, and I guess I see the significance of it now more than ever. In the song itself, in the album official release, they leave out the third verse, and the song itself, you know, when looked at in the right proper context, it has so many different meanings. You know, so the power within words and within letters and numbers is the hidden encoded meaning, the real meaning. And knowledge is power. In one sense, we don't want any power over anybody else, right? We just want everybody to be alerted and awoken to the real truth regarding their perceived reality, both externally and internally. So yeah, that was an amazing giveaway. But you have to accept that. You have to understand that 9/11 was a fakery. You have to have made your way through all of this and beyond. It's then you go back to 9/11 again and see the significance of it. And fundamentally, it's all about your head, your temple, your heart and your head, your temple, and setting up a vibration and getting the top of your head to ring. A bell goes ding dong, right? So you have the two D's. I was thinking about just the Vitruvian Man. So I'm giving you all clues here, the Vitruvian Man and how that's set up, what that's hinting to. Even the name itself, I say Leonardo didn't exist. He was pre-1598 when the dodo was discovered. But yeah, so all the clues and the connections are there. But Leonardo da Vinci, D.A., just said it was about the D.A. The A is the pinnacle. It's like the pyramid of knowledge in a sense. You have to garner shatter certain illusions, and it's not difficult, right? It's not difficult to know you're on a flat earth. The hardest part is to just forget about what you've been told. Forget about look at it objectively with a critical, clear eye and a clear mind, and be willing to overturn pretty much everything you've ever held dear. I think that's the biggest problem within people. But we shouldn't be afraid of that. All illusion has to go anyway. So once you can do that, then you can sort of move on to the next step. It's not difficult to know that there was no plane crashes on 9/11. There's plenty written on it. There's plenty of evidence. Go on YouTube and type fake plane crashes. What do you want me to do? And once you see it, then you go, of course, it's a fake plane crash. So then you move on, So this is the idea. No particular step is difficult. It's just an accumulation of things. So when you see that Radiohead fits into all of this, but then it fits in a greater sense. Break up the word itself gives you a big clue. And once again, it's all about a frequency. And we're having our bodies operate in the manner that they potentially always could operate and are waiting to be operated under or in one or the other. So yeah, that reminded me of the Borges song a little bit. Another Radiohead song, more so with the trumpet. It's excellent. It's People in Glass House. I'm not going to play it now. Let me get to key. I won't do singing now. If you know it, it goes once again. They go once again. I'm in trouble with my only friend. She is papering the window panes. She is putting on a smile. Just at the chorus I should have gone to. Oh, of course you'd like to sit around and chat. Of course I'd like to stay and chew the fat, but someone's listening in. that sort of vein to it, and then you have the trumpets going, and just overall it adds to that. I guess that drama and that's just that feel. So that's what that reminded me of as well, which brought me on to motion picture soundtrack. Yeah, which brought us on from Borges there, and this has to be the last piece of the clue. So Borges got that DAT, maybe that's a file of some sort. I won't look into that now. I'm sure there's probably pandemonium of sorts going on in the chat, but I put on a little delay of 8 seconds, and as suggested, just took away all wrenches. No wrenches on flat earth, really. I left a couple, but that's because I want to. And I know that they probably won't be used at all, so that's cool. And I hope everything is going grand. I left a delay of 8 seconds, so that might cut down on the sort of instant spammers, spanners. So let me go into chat. Cut down on the sort of instant spam. Yeah. Hey. Okay. Anything? Say hello to everybody. Anything you'd like me to talk about? I can sort of talk about. I know I have a habit of rambling on, but the thing is, once you get to a certain point, right, then you find that there's more, and everything that comes after ties in everything that comes before. It's just the way I find it, and so you sort of tend to leave a lot of what's behind, and then you just sort of concentrate on what can contribute or what's pertinent to what has led you on, or where that has led you on to. So that can be a problem as well. And I don't know really. I don't know. Again, I don't view this as any sort of a show. It's just me expressing myself, and it's also it's a live puzzle for us all. We might be deluded or mistaken in a lot of things, but that the fact that there is this puzzle there for us is undeniable at this stage, and it's down to the individual to sort of take the reins, because we have been informed about the true story associated with us in a different format, in the format we'd least expect or we'd least suspect. And when you think about it, that's exactly the place to put it. I talked about the Titanic. No better place to hide sweet fuck all than at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Let me go back a second here. Than the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Brilliant. Who the hell would think of not looking there? That just ties in with 9/11 as well. The Titanic. James Cameron, who made the film The Titanic, he guess where he was in 9/11? He was down supposedly at the bottom of the ocean, and he came up and got the news. Oh, what? What's that? What's that? Just type it into YouTube as well. He's going, oh Jesus, well shiver me timbers. That's bad. Is that bad? Imagine coming up from a deep sea dive and getting this news. And all been filmed as well, so it's all staged, and it mightn't be staged for the most part, but he is an actor in the role. You can see it, like he just gets out of the sub, and the lads are all gathered around. I suppose the excuse being we didn't want to tell him when he was under, just in case any undue nervousness might come into play. And that could easily end up in disaster. So we'll wait for him to come up. Anyway, they're all gathered around. It's not in a private room they tell him or anything. Whom he would have known a lot of the people if the story was official, or he potentially could have anyway. No, the whole fucking crew is gathered around, and there they are chatting about it on camera. What's that? Go away. No, I go, fuck, I missed that. I was down at the imaginary wreck of the Titanic. So again, we can see the comedy in it once we see the context. And I I'm of the mind that James Cameron and all the major movie directors, including Stanley Kubrick, whose death was faked, absolutely, his death was faked, surrounded in suspicious circumstances. So immediately, your what you call it are up, your antenna are up. Also with the movie Eyes Wide Shut, that's there's all the conspiracy talk about his final edit being edited against his wishes, and then him turning up dead 4 days later, 3 days later, or whatever. It's all just theater. He went on to produce, for the most part, to direct, I would say, 9/11. It's all interconnected, 9/11, the moon landings he's suspected of doing. But with 9/11, I think they all had a part. All the major directors had a part because it was so expansive, it's so extensive. And yeah, so James Cameron being down at one artificial site or one fabricated a slice from history, reporting on another one is too much. It's a greater story been told, and even JC himself, Jesus Christ, Jesus dying at 33. So yeah, there's a greater story being told in all of this, and it's there for you to pick up on if you should so wish. But 9/11 connecting everything. Just James Cameron. See how you go off in tangents. But yeah, I say all the big directors were involved in it. I even suspect that there was a Oliver Stone movie that came out in 2003 or 4 or something like that. I suspect that was made well years in advance, and some of the footage from that was used as some of the fake footage, and also from the fake rubble. We have to remember that not only are the direct images of any planes crashing or any buildings coming down are completely untrustworthy, so are the images we receive from the aftermath and the rubble photographs. Everything is catered for, and everything is telling us a greater, grander story. But yeah, it's all part of flat Earth, and all of these little pieces connect together, and then lead you through this maze of, I guess, wonder. It does, doesn't it? I mean, no matter what you might think of what I might be saying, how mad you might think I am, you still have to think your own thoughts must be mad. And compared to a few years ago, where you weren't living on a still and stationary Earth, and you weren't central for all intents and purposes, and there wasn't really any greater significance, and the world indeed appeared to be something completely different than what it appears to be today. So I wonder how I wonder how the chat is going. Charm Rear, I see, who's joined at the hip with his Siamese twin sister, Charm Fair. A right fair they make, right? How you doing? Is there more fighting in the chat? I don't think you and Charlotte get on too well, but I don't know what to do at this stage. I can't really take sides, right? Okay, so I know there's a lot of chat there now, so I hope everyone is well. I won't go down through because it'll take ages. But I will say hello to everybody, and let me just any questions you might have, because I can expand on quite a few things just in terms of how I see it. And as I said, if I'm wrong, or if I have a picture that is not working in the general sense in my own brain, then I want to know, and I want to move on to a better proposition, and hopefully fit those cogs into place and get everything working, at least from a mental point of view. There's no way of proving any of this, and it's indeed a futile thing to try and prove any of this. It's all about each individual building up their own picture, their own universe, their own reality. Within that reality includes an image you have of the place where you live, and the greater structure or the greater design or reasoning behind that structure. And I think these questions are deep within us all. Whether we deal with them overtly or not, that's up to the individual. I'm constantly not ardently looking, I think a lot of things will just come to you, but I'm constantly looking to sort of cement things with the likes of the Milky Way, the moon, on the moon. I've pointed out that certainty. It's clarified by all, verified by a few. So now I have offered up my explanation as to what I think is going on. I'm not going to be writing any papers on it. This is not what it's about. Even though, again, that is so big, like, because I mean, how is astronomy? You go into any astronomy society, and I just make it known and say, look, here's a picture of this swathe on the moon between the craters Eratosthenes and Eudoxus, which are anagrams for season at Earth and Exodus, by the way. And here we have a picture of the Milky Way. And if you do a point-to-point match, overall, you get a 100% match. So one is intimately connected and related to the other. Now, how can that be in terms of the model that you present as a reality? As I said, I've cast that aside. They're stumped with that. They're absolutely flummoxed with providing an explanation. So you kind of leave that behind. The bigger question is for flat earthers who are out to try and understand exactly what might be going on. And first of all, you'd have to clarify that for yourself. Then you can try to come up with a possible explanation. I've offered my possible explanation, and that's where I stand at the minute, you know. So then I sort of accept that, and you can be thinking about it every now and whatever, you know, give it whatever thought you like. But the minute I come across something that will make me shift from that position, then I'll think about it obviously first, and I'll talk about it if I get a chance to come on. So yeah, I have no problem changing my mind on absolutely anything. So that's my best offer and my best explanation for that. But yeah, that question remains to be answered by flat earthers. How, for instance, is Lord Stephen going to explain that? It's a comparison he can do himself. Get the best high definition picture of the Milky Way you can. Same with the moon, best high definition picture that you can zoom right in, and you can put one up against the other, and you'll find that they are a match. There are points of well, you can do what we were saying, points of, I'm trying to look for the right term, after a certain number of intersecting points, you can say that one is directly based on the other, and there's an intimate interplay going on between what we view as separate things, the Milky Way, which is said to be a swathe of distant stars and galaxies, which we find ourselves in the midst of. And that's the Great Rift as well, which I term it, Milky Way / the Great Rift. Just type it in and you'll see the swathe that comes up. So that swathe, in flatter terms, that's been described as a crack in the barrier as well. I've heard that by Wakey especially. So somebody cracking the barrier, the water's coming through it, it's been repaired. So that sort of implies a moving dome then, isn't it? So I think that's wrong as well, dealing with a light reflection. And pretty much that's all there is. When the sun's energies, if the sun's energy was suddenly be switched off, then all of the lights, all of the luminaries would go off instantaneously, because that's all there is the sun. That brings us back to Haddock's eyes. I get around that way. Stephen Haddock, yeah, he was 64, right? So that's interesting, isn't it? 8.8 is 64, and so it's been all about the eights, the hidden hand, more especially the H, the 8, recently. But yeah, the H comes into it again. My heart and lute, from Haddock's eyes. So Stephen Haddock. In the paddock, you find horses normally, right? Well, we get this poem from the White Knight, which a knight, as everybody knows, on a chessboard is a horse's head, and indeed he wears a helmet in the shape of a horse's head. So yeah, there's that connection there. I'm not saying it is the connection, but it's all very interesting to say the least. But yeah, Haddock's eyes leads us to Thomas More, which connects with the behemoth. Thomas, TH, More, MO or OM, which is behemoth. And the song itself, My Heart and Lute, which I have put music to, original music, and because I think it's a very important poem. First of all, I don't think Thomas More existed, but we find out that he was responsible for writing Utopia, or said to be responsible for writing Utopia, as he was said to have been beheaded. And the beheaded theme comes up quite a lot in Alice in Wonderland, as to Looking Glass. And For the head, for the most part, put the head back on. So this is important, and especially the H. But yeah, so we can appreciate these little clues and tips. My Heart and Lute, the song itself, or the title itself, well, it encodes my earth and stars. Remember I said the solution to Alice Through the Looking Glass was oysters, or eye stars, right? And that leads us on to the musical piece, which was by Mozart, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Again, not very complex, but just convoluted. But onto My Heart and Lute. The H at the end of heart gives you earth, E-A-R-T-H. But if you think about adding a H to the end of heart, you get hearth. That's indeed where Alice, when she goes through the looking glass, first of all, picks up all the figures, the king and queen, from the heart to the fire. So yeah, anyway, My Heart and Lute, you take the H, put it to the end, you get earth. And lute, when you read it backwards, you get E-T-U-L, which is etul, which is etul in French, which is star. So it's my earth and star. And though it's not quite the final piece, it's the second final piece, Mystery to Solve in Alice in Wonderland. And the final piece then is the chapter 13, the discarded chapter, the wig and the wasp and the wig. So yeah, My Heart and Lute, my earth and stars. That's what it's all about. My earth, outside anyway, the external puzzle is to figure out what is going on with my earth and the luminaries above, the barrier above, my earth and star. That tells you everything. It is all about the flat and stationary earth and the one star, the sun, that creates all the other light effects. Broadcast over a contoured surface, mirror-like surface, which gives us all the different effects. But the source of the sun that we see as a reflection, intense reflection in the sky, the source itself is moving. So then we have to delve into it. We have to understand that all tides surge from the north. So when you understand that, that's trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of water going someplace and coming to someplace, coming from someplace. Twice a day, just like clockwork, broken clockwork. So once we incorporate that into our thinking and we look into mythology, children's stories, this is the way where the truth is really encoded. You see, you can't like the children. So it's written truth. The parents have indoctrinated the children into misunderstanding and misrepresentation of the letters and words. So we've forgotten for the most part. But when we go back and we re-examine these stories presented to us, we do find the real truth encoded. I said it so many times. Rockabye baby, what a strange lullaby to sing to your beautiful child, just because of the lyrical content alone. A soothing lullaby, but the lyrical content, rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down will come baby, cradle and all. Shit, man. We had this prom, right? So yeah, different stories being told. So when we go back and look at it with new eyes, yeah, we can take a literal interpretation from it somewhat, but there's also a metaphorical and symbolic representation, and that's what we have to look out for. That's the only true language at this stage, and the true language can be whittled down to very few symbols, very few indeed. Just as I was saying about the numbers being mirrored, when you mirror and reverse each number and add it to its original from 1 to 9, each number can be made into an 8. Think of it in terms of digital clock. The exception being 0 and 1. Pretty much the same. I'm going to be working on this as well. Can the same be said for all letters? Either in its capital form or its lowercase form. When inverted or mirrored and reversed and overlaid on its original, can we get an 8 from all numbers? I'm thinking many, and all letters. I'm thinking a lot of them. I can think of a few exceptions, so that'll be interesting to work out the exceptions and to see if they fit in with why I think they might be exceptions. So that's the idea here. So let me just say again. I'll just say I love to everyone en masse, and I hope you can talk about some of these things as well, rather than well, not telling anyone to talk about anything. But yeah, they are interesting things, and they are real steps, I think, that should you wish to continue this search beyond flat Earth, that are waiting for you. So I think you will come across them either now or at some time if you do continue your search. Although I think time is running short. I do think that the 23rd of September, I just decoded the 420 there, but also it was mentioned in the last clue, the 20, it said the witch is back, the 23rd, and me. So to use that and sign, and when you look at the keyboard, that and sign is found under the number 7. So again, 7/23rd, that's September, in one reading, September 23rd. And the witch is back. Yeah, let me tell you what I thought about that. Just briefly. Well, the Wizard of Oz, from the musical clue, we had Mozart, M-O-Z, everything 1, 2, 3, M-O-Z-A-R-T. So Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, again, the star came into it. That leads us to discovering that the same tune is used for the 1, 2, 3 and the ABC. And yeah, so you get M-O-Z-A-R-T. 1 letter, 2 letters, 3 letters. And Oz, of course, is Oz. And that's been in our minds as well. But when you think about the witch is back, Glinda is the first witch I thought of, the Witch of the North. You find out in the book that she was actually allocated the Witch of the South description. So there you were being told straight away there that we have mirroring involved, and there's a clue there, but the letters themselves, Glinda, G-L-I-N-D-A. So it's G-L, separate letters, capital letters, G-L in D-A. And again, I point out the significance of D-A. And I'll go into more detail about that. It will make absolutely more sense when I do the graphic for it. Again, it's a template, and all the letters and all the numbers of the alphabet are made from this template. But beyond what the power that you give to letters and numbers via understanding their true meaning, beyond that, there's a greater story being told in the, what are you going to call it? A template, insignia itself. It's like a pattern. And again, it will make more sense when I walk you through that, because yeah, I think this is the getting definitely close to the pinnacle here, because yeah, I'm trying to think where else can you go. I didn't think there was too much further to go, and there isn't really, because now with this template, everything is fit into place. And it's about a few things. The H is one. Everything revolving around the H. The H is the 8, the alpha, the 0, and the infinite, the alpha and the omega. So H, look at your keyboard, it says B, H, U8 in a diagonal. That's telling you yourself. You can take that or leave that. So you be the 8. It's within you. And if you look at just to say this as well, if you look at the other diagonal, you have TH, UMB. I've spoken about this before. The significance of the thumb in making big leaps forward in terms of advancement. Either metaphorical or literal, or literally even as well. But yeah, you can see the number right there. H in the center. THUMB has the word hum in it. HUM, Humpty Dumpty, hum. Well, backwards, as we have learned, is BMUHT, which is behemoth. So when we have the hum, we know we're dealing with a frequency, a vibration of some sort, but you wouldn't place any certain significance in that if you had a different context. So when you look up chapter 40 in Job, And funnily enough, it ends, where does it end on? I think it's either line 42, which is great, like, because I've been saying that 42 is not the answer. 420 is the ultimate answer to life, universe, and everything. That's when everything will be revealed. And it's always been planned that way. So it is, you know, the future is more set than anything the past is thrown at us. So yeah, that it ends on line 42. But when you go in and look at read the chapter of the behemoth and about the behemoth in a different light, you can see it takes on a much greater significance. So I say it is that vibration that shakes us free. It's a mantra. It already, I was talking to Ayan about it, and he was talking about the positive nature, the effective nature of the mantra TH. And that's an S sound when you think about it. It's a softened S. It isn't as harsh as the Z or the IZ. All sounds are interchangeable. So the IS is equivalent to the IZ Elizabeth or the ISS. So you have this harsh vibration Z versus the soft TH. If you think of the insignia for the church, which is IHS, well, there you have the H intermingled, almost sort of tied up within the S and the I within the IS. So you have to free the H or the TH via vibration. And it's that it is as well. It's that, again, from a philosophical standpoint, within flat earth realization, giving existence to something that has no right to have any existence. For instance, we would have sworn blind that the moon was or is what they said it was, unless we came to a new point of realization. So therefore, by our very utterance, we've given existence to something that has no right in existence, or it's not true, in other words. And you can't make something that's not true unless you're a creator of some sort. So if we are creators, and by the careless use of this vibration and expression and thinking, we give our energies to the wrong, and we give life to the dead, if you will, in one form. So yeah, if you think of the church as IHS, that's what I take it is going on. So we release the sword from the stone, sword being the S word, from the S tone is the TH. TH represents the theta, so that's all important. Theta with the zero with the line going across it. There in itself is two D's mirrored against one another, but it's also an 8. It's also very close to dodo, right? Dada is very close to dodo. And again, within this template, all of these different figures are to be found. And it's quite amazing, actually. So I'll hang off on that just to make sure I have it right, but it's so simple. And when I explain, when I go to it, you'll go, man, that's, it's all about recognizing the masculine versus the feminine, and the division that has been just foisted upon us, that we find ourselves in the midst of, anyway. So okay, so let me just see if there's any questions. And once again, just a big hello to everybody. Yeah, I was talking with Del earlier on, briefly, not too briefly. It was a good enough conversation, and in terms of length, and you never sort of you never get a chance to sort of expand or develop. You know what I mean? It's not that type of forum or hangout. But yeah, I think the points were made are pertinent enough, and we do have to remember that there are no leaders. Who are you going to nominate to lead you, for goodness sake? You don't know anybody. This is all ideas at play here. And no, there are no leaders, even though there are always temptations, there are always camps to follow. There are always lures to be swallowed. But I would say don't fall for it, no matter what. This is an individual's journey after all, and no one can tell you the truth. No one can tell you your truth. You have to work through it yourself and be satisfied with it. And that's what I was saying earlier on, just a bit earlier on there, about where I'm at in terms of my thinking. I can state a few things openly and clearly, and it doesn't mean that they're correct. It's just a man expressing his point of view based on what he's come to learn in his own right, and passing on that information. It leads somewhere. There's no doubting that it leads somewhere. Could all be a big red herring. It could all be a big wind-up, but no, we've come too far for that. There's a point and a purpose to all of this, and it's there for us to work out. And so we're very limited in our scope and our view, and I think that's necessarily so. So whatever really is going on, we get to find out eventually. I think we get to find out. We don't have to wait for the real fun or the funeral. We don't have to wait for that. We can get to understand it beforehand. And who knows, get to depart. I was thinking about the that last piece of the puzzle with the Borgias music. I was thinking initially that it would resolve to a destination in the north somewhere, that sort of thing, and then you could make your way there, something like that. Then you get a trip to what do you call it, to paradise beyond the North Centre. But I think maybe we saw that already. We already discovered about the dodos, the 33-foot yacht that made regular trips up and around Greenland. So maybe that's solved, and that makes sense then as well. So the puzzle has sort of moved on from there, and seeing the next clue then, and realizing about Glinda, GL in DA. And that makes a lot more sense. W, which is a 2023 in me, that gives you the 7/23, which is September 23rd encoded. So the witch is the good witch, by the way, Glinda. So the good witch is back. 23rd of September marked something special. And also another reading to the clue is 23 and me. Well, 23 is W. And M and W are opposites. So joining the two of those together will give you an 8 as well. But me itself, when you just equate the numbers, add letters to the numbers, and you just do a bit of adding up, it sums up to 9, and 9 is I. So me and I, no coincidences there. So I fits into this final template as well nicely. It all does. So I'll wait, just clarify that completely and go through that the next time. But yeah, okay. Yeah, so if anyone wanted me to talk about something, I'll go through chat now. Anyone wanted me to talk about something specifically, could do that. But once again, yeah, because it's a live puzzle, you sort of tend to, for the dodo, for the most part, I've sort of left behind. You know what I mean? Even though it's so important, I've sort of left it behind. But no worries there. Okay. Okay, so let me just, if I missed anything, I don't want to go back too far as well. Let me just, because I had thought on this, Stuart McKenzie, you say, like you said, you'd, they can't be that stupid. There's no money in the world you could pay me to be an enemy to humanity. Well, yeah, this is a pressing question once you get to this level of flat Earth awareness, and you see all of these usual suspects waiting to pounce at every hand's turn, like Brenda dying for a link loads of places earlier on, dying to get on and give out her spiel. So you can look at them like that, and indeed I think it's part of the process. But I've been saying for the longest time, there's a greater game going on, and without these adversaries at pretty much every hand's turn, you're not going to wake up properly. You're not going to be challenged properly. So I think you can either, once you get to the stage of flat Earth, either just sit back and leave things happen, if you're so inclined, and just sort of take a step aside and understand that these people, these adversaries, well, as I've often said before, flat Earth is populated, I'm going to say is a better word, from the very start, with actors on all levels. Actor is somebody who's presenting themselves as something that they really are not. They have an ulterior motive behind their true actions. And yeah, it's populated. The baller earth, their actors are easy to identify. They're the same antagonists who come back week in, week out, month in, year out, with the same objections, and never having moved on now in terms of their thinking on any topic that has been up for discussion, especially conspiracy-minded topics. So they're easy to identify, but more difficult to identify are the flat earth actors, but they're there in spades as well. And yeah, pretty much everyone is playing a role of to one degree or other. Some aren't. I can say categorically that I'm not, but I mean, why should you trust me? You don't have to. It doesn't. Who am I saying that to? Like, who do I want to trust me? But I can say that for myself. But I am aware that lots of people are, and there are people who sort of affiliate with certain groups. They have been associated with the same groups from the start, and the way I look at them now is that, yeah, as opposed to being enemies to humanity, they're playing a greater game. It's the noble lie. It's they're playing a part to because they know the outcome. But now it's all about helping the people wake up, and that's not about giving them answers. That's about maybe alerting them to certain questions or areas by an outrageous reaction or something, or by an incongruous reaction I might have. You know, something like that. That is so. Yeah, but still, their limitations are set and made clear there, so you can sort of move on from that. And that's the way I've come to view it now, is that these are acts, or these are parts that are being played for the greater good. It's all about the individual waking up, and in order to copper fasten your own views, you have to think. You have to disprove the globe in clear and uncertain terms, and be sure of, you know, your beliefs, and be sure of your position, where you're standing. Because only when you are that, then you can move on. You know, if you're on shaky ground, no matter where you are, you'll never get anywhere, because you'll never settle on something solid and then allow for further building. You know, so this is what you have to be aware of, and you can go down that road. It can be, I'm pretty sure it can be a very hard time now, because you see all of this deception, this blatant and clear deception, and you're going, what the fuck is it? Is it gone beyond hope? These people are relentless. These people are sort of unstoppable. You know, they are true enemies to mankind, and we're doomed in one sense, because if people have gone that far, then what are their controllers like? You know, what are the people at the very top like? What sort of brutal regime is in place? These are the roads that can lead you down. I don't think you need to go down that road. I think everything is much different than what we ever thought, and what we ever can think at this point. But it's all rolling out, and these people are exactly that. They are hurdles which need overcoming along the way. And what will happen is you will sharpen your own thinking, and shake yourself loose of antiquated and old habits in terms of the thought processes anyway, and you'll be able to move on in your own journey without having gotten emotionally involved too much. You can get emotionally involved a little, of course, but certainly too much over faceless, for the most part, nameless characters on the internet. But even those who offer their face, yeah, don't get too emotionally involved with anybody. That's simply sound advice. And yeah, it's far from the end. That's the one thing I keep reiterating. It's far from the end. Once you get to flat Earth, I've said it before, the dodo awaits. Once you get to the dodo, then something else awaits, until everything ultimately all sort of fits in together into a nice package. This is just the truth that I've come to learn. And once you get to flat Earth, as I said, to just sit there and stagnate is pointless. You know, this is why we've come this far, because our curiosity, our search for truth, our need to have that truth, is pretty strong and powerful. First and foremost within ourselves, and then for everyone else as well. We're all the same at the end of the day. We're all different but the same but different. So yeah, let me get to the let me get to any questions that might be there. So yeah, so Stuart, so we have a few ways of possibly thinking. As I say, it's not just when we identify actors, there's actors on both sides. So you have to make a similar call then about people who've identified actors on the flat Earth side, and that's a very harsh thought to entertain, right? You know, especially with people for the most part who all you've seen from them is goodness in one sense, positive. Even though there are certainly conspiracies everywhere. Mark Sargent being one of them. All I've ever heard him say is positive things, and really, you know, I can't think of one negative thing. I've rarely heard him even using language. So that's of course too much for one man. So there's something not quite genuine. And early on, I identified Mark Sargent as an actor, and he doesn't mind that. He knows that this is the story, and he knows that Mark Sargent, Pepper, he was a prepper of all people, of all things to be. His only internet presence before the clues was a prepper's guide, all the way up to whenever just before he came on. Prepper's guide back in the 90s sometime. I'm sure the date itself there is significant. But yeah, that's a clue for you. He was a gamer as well, and to a big degree, this is like a game. He talked about planetarium style light show, well, something along those lines, right? So yeah, you know, he was an actor from the get-go, but you had to make that connection, the Sergeant Pepper, Mark Sargent Prepper connection. Once you made that, then you move on and you look back at some of the stuff that Mark has put out there in a different light, even up to and including one of the, do you remember this, what was that song, The Little Things? He used to open up his show with The Little Things by, I can't remember the name of the character now, but anyone out there will probably know it. But look up his association to Alice in Wonderland. I think he wrote the soundtrack to one of Alice in Wonderland, one of the big ones as well. So that's your other connection there. So yeah, all of these things are there in place, and the people who are playing these roles have set scripts to go by, so they can't alter them. I often say that, look, when I've called people out as actors, I've done that knowing that they're playing a role here, but it's no judgment on the man or the woman. Needless to say that if everything is as I think it might be, which is that there's a greater awakening going on here, then if you were privy to that greater awakening, you were probably only too happy to play a role, understanding that there's a greater outcome to be had for all. So yeah. There every Sherlock Holmes needs his Moriarty. You know, that's the upshot of it. So I didn't get to read many. Well, I read out Stuart's question there. Well, that was more of a comment to somebody else. But Aeon, how you doing, man? Okay. I think the chat seems to be going fine, right? A little delay on. Is the delay on, is it? I did put in an 8-second delay, but there doesn't seem to be too much confusion or too much chaos. So that seems good. Okay, let me just read out. Oh gosh, so we have to go here again. 2 years ago, I thought one day YouTube might be able to explain sunsets. I was wrong. Well, I explained sunsets well over a year ago at this stage. So, I mean, none of you want to listen to that. None of you want to pay attention. So I moved beyond that, understanding that nothing will ever change your mind. So it's pointless to try and to continue to do it. But just briefly, when you're looking over water, you get this false horizon. Under zoom with the technology, when you zoom in, especially over sunsets, over a distance, unknown distance in one sense, these different effects occur. You have a false horizon that presents itself, and the real horizon is seen when you have this contrast introduced into it. So what you're seeing is pretty much a mirrored layer. So it's a direct vision against a mirrored image. and you're confusing the two, and you haven't thought your way through how that might work if it was a light. The sun was a light in the sky as it traveled around day to day. This is exactly what we see. You can reverse the process when it's sunrise, and it's exactly the same thing. If you go onto channels like Wide Awake, you will see evidence for this. Every time you'll see evidence for this mirrored water layer in clear and irrefutable terms. He's another one who, you know, a lot more should be held, should be taken him seriously in what he's presented in terms of direct evidence, because when you take this mirrored water layer into account, not only do you explain the likes of the ridiculous claims by the likes of Soundly, that you can see curvature at 6 miles, but you can explain pretty much every phenomena that's associated with light, water, and zoom and long range viewing. So yeah, your questions are dealt with, answered. Next, please. So, yeah. So, okay, the sky is just the inner wall of the dodo's arse. Well, what does a dodo's arse look like, reptilian overlord? That's the question, isn't it? Seeing as one never existed, you might as well ask what Mickey Mouse's arse looks like. You know, the dodo never existed as a bird and always encoded the flat earth. If you find this notion ridiculous, let me go into here. I was down too long now. Again, nothing much talked about. I didn't get to talk about some of the amazing things I found, but there's no hurry. Not much hurry. Okay, let me do that. That's cool. I'll do that because I think Steve Anthony did this. Yeah, he did. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I was going to get up to Gleason's one, so let me just get that one will do. So if you think it's a ridiculous notion, here's the azimuthal equidistance map that we're all used to seeing. You can't. Let me just. We're not the best example now, but you can see. You got enough example, and it's not right. The Gleason's map, but at least you recognize that. You have South America here as it wraps around North America, Africa over by the butt. So the bud would be the tip of Africa. Madagascar area would be the bud on this representation. And then you have India right down at the leg, Australia then at the foot. So that's just giving you an indication, which is wrong. It's not a correct interpretation, but it's just giving you an indication that people who do accept the Gleason's map or the UN azimuthal equidistance map has been somewhat valid and scoff at the idea of the dodo representing the flat earth face post-inundation. Well, just look at that there and you can see that they're almost the perfect match for one another. But there's always more to the story, right? So the idea that the dodo doesn't encode something very deep indeed, well, you'll have to look at that again. And it's only once you get to the dodo that you can move beyond the dodo. Even looking at the dodo here, look how close that is to 8-8. Seriously. Let me get out my red pen. Hang on, I better just, is that being presented? Yeah, that's coming through to everyone. Let me get out my red pen here. Do a bit of a, look at how close that is to, so let me just, look at how close that is to 8-8. That's amazing, isn't it? Not accident, on its side, so it's not right way up. So there's more to go once you discover the dodo. That's what it's telling you, and indeed we do find that. So look at how close the dodo is to 8-8. Pretty cool, right? Nothing by accident. And that leads us on to the D and the A. And the D and the A itself is very significant. ACDC, ABC, no, sorry, not ABCD, DAD, the word DAD itself, DAD. Many different connections like this, many basic connections. ADHD is another one I thought of. You have the D and the A and the H. You know, these are the three that you need. So yeah, all of this is interconnected. I'll just go for a cigarette and then I'll. So I sent it to A4 in text. A4, did you know that A is one, or A is A and D is four, the fourth letter, so that you have A, D. But that just reminded me of something else. A is one, and D is D, 4 is D. So that's one dimensional. And what is one dimensional? Sure, that doesn't exist. So there's a dot. You can't say a dot exists. It has zero dimensions. Or is that a line? Actually, hang on, that's a line, isn't it? So you can't say a line exists, I should say. That is one dimension, which is only length. There's no thickness. So it's an imaginary quality, right? All math, geometry is based on let A, B be a line, or a connection between 2 points. So you're letting something that's imaginary, and of course it has its uses, absolutely. But you're letting something that's imaginary dictate reality, and after a certain point, that becomes untenable. And indeed, all the maths associated with everything presented to us in a stellar sense is nonsense. Orbital mechanics, nonsense. Nonsense. Because let's assume that A is a planet, B is another planet. No basis in reality. We're dealing with a light show up there, simple as that. You were wrong, so therefore all your methodology has to be, not if not thrown out, completely reorganized. So, but we move beyond that. So that's amazing, isn't it? The Dodo Earth, Steve the Dad, Steve Anthony. And that's not even the best illustration of it there. I have better ones than that. Let me have a look. You have to stop sharing and then reshare. I just wanted the Gleason's one, the Gleason's map, really. And yeah, well, that'll do. That'll do just to give you an indication. So all I did was, just like I was talking about earlier on, an Ireland or an island, if your land becomes flooded, especially deeply flooded, and so certain parts of the land are cut off from the rest over time, if the flood isn't sorted out or whatever flood waters are left, then that becomes an island, right? But it's still ultimately part of the land, so you never describe that as a normal condition. So I thought this to do the same with the Gleason's map. First of all, turn it down, turn it around, so Australia's at the bottom. Then imagine, because all countries have a continental shelf, imagine some of the water being drained away, and what sort of outline would you get, right? You knew that the likes of the Mediterranean Sea would be, just reclaimed, if you will. Philippines, the connection with Australia, all of this sort of stuff, as well as who knows what else. But this was just a basic effort. And once again, when you do that, that's what comes up. It's the dodo, man. It's a dodo. So to say the idea that the dodo might encode something associated with the flat Earth is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous on the face of it if you do accept the Gleason's map. And of course, the Gleason's map was presented to you. Think of the people who had that up on their wall all of a sudden. And you're going, Jesus, yeah, everyone seems to have this map, or certainly all the people we get to look at seem to have that map. So that's your clue in itself. The name in itself, the Gleason's map. I also talked about before Mark Sargent's choice of flat Earth map, which was the Orlando Ferguson map, which is the Our Land Though Fear Go Son map. And the strangest choice ever for Mark Sargent to pick as a representation of his view of flat Earth, when the Earth is not flat at all. The Earth is contoured in all manner of directions. It seems flat in places, on the uprise, and on the downrise, or the downfall, in other places. So yeah, something else has been encoded there. All the numbers adding up to 666. It's about the sun. Everything's about the sun. And yeah, it turns out that the map itself encodes flat Earth, flat and situated as a gimme. It encodes the contour of the barrier, low at the north. We live in a biball system, so you have a separate barrier for the north center. But the barrier we're under, low at the north, rising to its highest at the equator, and down low at the peripherals again. So that's the contour. And it's not amazingly above your head at any one particular point. I think the maximum height is, again, it may be around the equator area, 111.1 kilometers. I take that just on the basis that there seems to be some sort of a definite physical barrier up there, which I take to be electromagnetic barrier holding back the waters beyond. So perfectly mirror-like when you introduce light. As we all know from children, when you're looking at a puddle, you can see your friend's reflection or whatever. So yeah, that's 111.1 kilometers at its highest point. It sounds good to me. I know from my own direct experience that the sky seems to be lower here. All the luminaries, the moon star seems to be closer than at more southern climes, i.e. Spain and California, where I've been. So again, it adds support to the idea of this contoured barrier. And then when you put that in the context of we live in a collapsed system, a collapsed bubble, if you will, and yeah, it all builds up to make a coherent picture. And there's no one accepting this. You know, this is not what it's about. It's long since gone beyond waiting for any sort of peer. Not support as such, but you know what I mean. You just, after a certain point, you're on your own in this search, and you've got to trust yourself somewhat. But yeah, just this, you can see it yourself. That's a dodo, man. Then you look into the dodo a bit more, and you find out all manner of things. Ultimately, the dodo didn't exist. It was said to be found with giant turtles and elephant birds. I was looking for the elephant bird. I knew there'd be an elephant connection, just based on the turtle to the infinite waters, the turtle with the elephants, 4 elephants on its back, and the disc, the flat Earth disc on its back, flying through infinite space. I say the turtle represents waters, the infinite waters beyond, and the outer shell as well. So we do have a barrier. Then the elephant represents the dry land amidst the waters. And yeah, the disc that's represented by the dodo itself. Dodo represents the face of the earth post-inundation. And yeah, the most accurate representation is the latest one, which is, I think it was 2011. And it's by, even the name itself is very interesting, Julian Pender, as in Pendragon, Arthur Pendragon, Hume, and the H is well, H-U-Me. Hume, H-U-Me. Look on your keyboard, H-U-8. So he's the latest artist, supposedly, he's credited with it. But again, it's all encoded within the name. Julian, we're in the Julian calendar. That's all related to the sun as well. Julian, July is the 7th month, right? So yeah, so the real flat Earth map is to be found. I have it here. I posted it before. Actually, let me get it up. Well, just now that we're talking about it, I have it. Let me show you. I'll have to reshare now. One sec. I'll just put it side by side. One sec now. There's that now. I think that's a good way of maybe coming to recognize transgenders as well. People who are just, you know, oh, here we go. Going down to, you know, talking, thinking, making sense, and also looking up stuff. And you know, multitasking like that, that'll be a good indicator of possible candidate for transgender investigation, because it seems to be just equality mostly associated, not exclusively, of course, with the fairer sex, if that's politically correct to say. Okay, so here we go. Also, this is the image of Pender, Julian Pender Hume, and it's to be found in the. Let me get my pen on. It's to be found in the Oxford Museum. Radiohead from Oxford. I read out the article already where they were Tom York. It was nicknamed as Dodo, was taking a trip to the Natural History Museum in Oxford. And we're getting to find out all manner of things. So this is the painting to be found. There's an update on a previous version, which I have there as well. And yeah, he goes through the pros. It's only a short video. Just type in Julian Pender Hume into YouTube with Dodo, and you can take it from there. But he does make a few changes. You automatically can see down here. Look at the curve down here. How this is very reminiscent of America and how it curves around towards Mexico. And this, needless to say, around the bill here is very reminiscent of North America, or Southern America. I'm just roughly just pointing you out there to see how it might look. So as you wrap around the north wing here, you're going all the way around Eastern Asia. Interesting that this bird, I pointed this out before, this bird is always drawn in many representations, official representations. So I take it that this encodes Australia. That's right. And Africa is over here. Africa, it's that sort of distribution. Europe underneath the wing here, and then you're back over to North America, Northern Canada. So that's just a vague, rough idea of what I'm talking about. I'm just skipping over this. So it's not very much different from the Gleason's map, but the Gleason's map isn't correct. This is the true representation. You see, on a flat and stationary Earth, there's a fixed relationship between land masses, no matter how big and no matter what size. And that's a planar relationship. The biggest variation in water level Earth-wide is the highest variation in tide, which is about 70 or 80 meters, I believe. I knew it would be up near the North Centre, and indeed it is to be found near the North Centre, as I knew that all tides surge from the north. So that's about 70 to 80 meters. So Earth-wide, that's the biggest variation in sea level, if you will. 70 or 80 meters, which is over a span of thousands of miles, nothing. Forgetting about swells now, but even swells, you're not going to get up that high. So 70 or 80 meters, and that's the maximum variation. And yeah, so on the right, yeah, so that's so the land is going to be sticking up, and there's going to be a fixed relationship between the land positioning. I talked before about the dodo being wearing a checkerboard dress, which just means that this is what the square and compass, and that's after taking on a new, the square and compass and the G, it's after taking on a new interpretation, and as well within the remit of this latest template. So that's easily to be found as well, and there's a context for it all now. But yeah, the square represents a Cartesian coordinate system that's to be used. It's used locally in your ordnance maps. It's to be used on an Earth-wide scale as well, with 0, 0 being the north center, which itself is isolated, but 0, 0 and a grid-like coordinate system. East is east and west is west, never the twain shall meet. So from the left side to the right side is east, vice versa, all the way up. There's your center mark here, all the way up. When you're traveling in that direction is really west. Compass just reference point, really west. Bottom to top, south to north, and vice versa. You might want to draw lines in there. So yeah. And the idea being that scaled down, there is a fixed relationship that remains fixed under current circumstances. And that can be drawn out. And when you do draw it out, you get something that it looks remarkably like the dodo, or at least the dodo itself encodes the actual map. I was wondering where to get the continents. Well, no better place to, so once you found the actual size continents, then you could scale them up appropriately. So let's just say, for instance, we started with South America and the tip of South America here. We could put that at the tip here and scale it up to the appropriate, or scale it down. It doesn't matter which. Just to get the two. The most important thing is to get it matched first of all, and scale the rest of these continents here or land masses here to the same degree. I have something interesting to say about this. I wouldn't even want to talk about this tonight, but you never guess where that's to be found, this representation. That's why I put the two of them together. This representation here, I was looking for an accurate sort of inter landmass, continental landmass relationship, and where that might be found and why it might be found. Well, I take it that this is found a few possible places, but when I tell you where this is found, you'll go, okay, well, there's some definite connection there. So I take it in real terms, Australia and Africa are really this relationship. Greenland and South America, really this size relationship. Whatever about Greenland, I should have left that out. Asia and America is really this size relationship, which is pretty surprising, really. So China was a lot bigger, and Russia, I thought it was a lot bigger. When you see, though, they're the same size as South Africa. You go, whoa, that seems strange. Or South America, I should say. That seems strange, but apparently that connects as well. That ties up from a different source. So yeah, everything's been skewed. Anyway, I found this then, and I said, well, doesn't that tie everything together? This is called the oculus, and it's to be found in the subway directly below the WTC Center in WTC, which is the World Trade Center in New York. So we have the one eye here, the two buildings, the two temples, transformed into one, a unified whole. It all connects in as well. I've often pointed out that if you look at the new building, it has upside down triangles and a sort of harmonious, unified whole. And this is representative of the male and female aspects. Well, that all ties in as well with the template. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more we'll tie in. But anyway, this is to be found beneath it. Everything's one eye now. And it's called the oculus, a floor map on the ground, which is significant itself. Remember, the dodo couldn't fly, so he was rooted to the ground. So that's telling you that, yeah, it's representative of something different. And indeed, I could talk about this for ages, but I mean, with the 2015 Economist magazine solution being the dodo and Mauritius, and at the very beginning of it, the treasure hunt was all about finding the payload of the turtle who was missing something from his back. Yeah, so that wasn't surprising because we knew that would be the solution. So that's how significant this is. And yeah, here's the puzzle. So this is to be found on the subway, WTC Center, and all these continents are proportioned relatively correctly. So yeah, to slot it in, this is what I'm thinking. Get South America. See, the thing is, with the narrative of the dodo, a few pieces have been found. They say the bill was found. I think I mentioned this already before. Another part was found, and another part was found. So that's a fixity. So I think that they're starting points. So let's say the bill, for instance, their first route start to South America. Then we move it over, we scale it proportionately, and we scale down the rest of the continents to the exact same, or scale up, whatever, to the exact same degree, and then we slot them in based on where the other pieces, according to the dodo narrative, were found, because the dodo didn't exist, so everything is significant in relation to the dodo, or at least has a potential significance. Now, just one other thing I want to point out. Yeah, so that was an amazing find, and how appropriate as well, how appropriate and how interconnected I say 9/11 is to all of this. And another thing I wanted just to point out is Antarctica here. Hang on. So I was looking at this and I said, fuck's sake, that's a match. That's a match, man. Actually, a better representation of Antarctica, you can see an elephant. See this area I'm going to shade in here. You can actually see an elephant sort of with trunk to the sky, trumpeting almost, sticking out at the top. So this is like goading you. It's giving you a clue as well. It's probably, I actually, now I look at it, based on where they say this is, I wonder, is that elephant's trunk pointing towards Mauritius? That would be hilarious. If I drew a straight line from where it seems to be pointing here, and I landed on Mauritius, that'd be funny, man. But anyway, I was looking at this. This is supposed to be Antarctica, but no, I compared it against at the Arctic and in and around Canada. So this is the fill. If you filled in the Arctic and just iced it over, you're getting something very similar to this. And even the cracks that were drawn in here, a lot of them correlate with the Arctic. So yeah, this is a very encoded work, and it is again the oculus, the all-seeing eye. That's the one eye inside us all. Ali B, all I be tells us that, right, Ali? If you're listening, it's all about the one eye B, and yeah. So that's pretty interesting, right? Everything else will then slide in nicely. And I'm even looking here. Look at this. Let me go in again now that I've looked at it a bit clearer. On the last representation of the dodo, there were letters as well, and it clearly said over here on my avatar here, it clearly said US and then SR. And how appropriate as well, because the US, we have Alaska here, which is said to be a US state, and then we have SR, Soviet Republic, and USSR. And why on earth would you find that on the dodo's back, except there was some encoded significance to it? But I just noticed again here some writing. So I won't look at that now, but you can sort of make out, it's one of those things, you know, look at it in a certain way for a certain amount of time. I can see a Y there almost, and an X, and I can see an 8, but I'll have a look. It seems to be 2 8s actually, an 8 and an 8. I'll have a look again. So yeah, these two combined I think is your flat Earth map then. And even look at Australia here. Just looking at it, and that's why we have all these clues to birds then as well. We have birds everywhere. From Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd was born the 25th of October 1888. It said, well, if you do a bit of math, 25 October is 8 in the first place. 8. Let's take it like that. So 25th, 2 and 5 is 7, and then add the 1 from the 1888, and you get 8. So you have 5 8s, 8 8 8 8 8. So why are birds coming into this so much? But I was just going to point out, look at the horn here. The horn here, and where I say Australia is, look at the little horn here. So that could be your clue to slot that in there. But whatever you do, when you have all the continents slotted in for good reasons, in good positions, that'll be the flat Earth map then. At any point, let's say you wanted to measure the distance between New York here and, well, you have a fixed distance. So if you knew the distance between New York and, let's say, it doesn't matter, just any fixed distance, then you can, on the map, pick out New York and measure that distance to Tokyo, say, and it would be an accurate distance based on that initial relative known distance. So that's the idea, and pretty simple to do. Again, I kind of left the dodo behind for to a big degree, because, well, not because nobody's picking up on it, but only because it leads on to greater things, not to greater things, just to things beyond, let's put it that way. So yeah, I'll leave that behind for a minute. Back into chat, and yeah. Okay. I already talked about this is not to dwell on anything, but I already talked about the significance of the dodo's closest relative being said to be the Liverpool pigeon. And we have the beetles associated with Liverpool, and they're very much connected with the dodo as well. So all of these different connections come into place. The Beatles front cover, the 2015 Economist cover, was very reminiscent of the Beatles Sgt. Pepper's covers. There's your clue there. Pied Piper, Sgt. Pepper can also trace its Tesla Truth was get very deep into this, and fair play to him. You've seen all the different connections, and they're all there to be made. But yeah, Sgt. Pepper, Pied Piper, the big connection there. So yeah, we've been led, and that connection with the dodo and the Liverpool pigeon is not accidental. It's homing pigeon. That's the first thing that came to my mind. And when you find out that Paul McCartney is actually living as caretaker now of the family home in Liverpool, the original Paul McCartney. So the whole Paul is dead as a dodo thing is all part of this greater story. And the original Paul McCartney is now caretaker of the family home in Liverpool. So again, homing pigeon, we need to come much closer to home to understand what's going on. That's where the Beatles come in. Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, all talk about Crowley and his reverse writing and his mirroring, and all of these stipulations in order for you to be a follower of his. Well, did you know one of his stipulations, and a fabricated character, again, giving you the big scare, like to send you off track. That's the idea. That's the pattern here. And yeah, but a stipulation that all of his students had to study Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through the Looking Glass intently. So again, you can jump to the MK Ultra, you can jump to all of these dark and nasty conclusions, but no, that's to send you off on the wrong path, or to scare you off investigating further, or just put it just a hurdle along the path. When you do look at Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass with the flat Earth, you have to have the flat Earth in mind. This is the whole thing that it ties it all together. Once you have the flat Earth in mind, then you can be able to see everything in a different context. And yeah, story is pretty much being laid out to you about the nature of the reality you're in, how to navigate around it, and also an understanding in terms of what happened, what may have happened, and how to, ultimately, yeah, wig and the wasp and the wig, I should say. This is all for a reason. He's telling you to wear a handkerchief upon your neck, upon your head, and yeah, let the sun shine. And it's all about a frequency and a vibration, which they mention quite a few times. A plum and a thumb, Humpty Dumpty, all of these things are pointing you in the same direction. So yeah, the greater story has been told, and we've made our way through quite a lot of it. There's still a small bit to make sense of, but yeah, what can I say? That's the Beatles connection, the Aleister Crowley connection. They're all telling you, take note of Alice in Wonderland. Take note of reverse writing, how true meaning is put across in terms of reverse positioning, reverse writing, reverse lettering, etc. And when we have these tools on board, then we can decode much. And it's not something that's not a secret that's hidden. It's more like a puzzle to be uncovered. That's the way I look upon it now, because it's there everywhere. Especially with this latest find, this template. Once I put it up tomorrow or whenever, you'll see exactly how it makes sense. And it's all about the D. I talked about D Marble coming onto the scene. Who is this guy who's been so effective and sort of so popular in such a quick time? Well, the clue is in his name, the D Marble, Marble Arch. Marble Arch is the top of your head, dome of your head that you got to get ringing like a bell via vibration, ding dong, and it's through that vibration that you reach the apex. It's all pointing to the third eye. That's what the pyramid and illumination is. And I think the third eye, again, is it's a spark of who we are. It's where our core resides. And that is nothing physical. See, this is the only reality we know, and we've come to realize that we've no hope of trying to describe what real is anymore. So yeah, we can't be thinking in terms of physical anyway. Now let me just say this juncture, that's why I'm saying again, that's for men out there, it's important if you want to progress, I suppose, that you have to hang on to your vital bodily fluids. So it doesn't mean you can't engage in intimate relations with your partners or whatever. But yeah, if you want to progress in this lines, this is the vital bodily fluid, and we can see why that might be as well. So all of these things combined, we can get to ring that bell and illuminate that. And I think it has to be solid as well, that crystalline pineal. Pine is solid, right? So I think it has to be solid, and everything is reverse of truth. They talk about our pineal glands being calcified. Well, maybe that's what they need to be, or solidified anyway. So then when you get this frequency vibration going, you can activate it, and then your head rings like a bell and you take off. Who knows what happens after that? But this is the story that I'm absolutely definitely sure is being told. And ultimately, when you think about it, if the outside is sorted out for the most part, then all that's left is the inside, and that's the best part, isn't it? So sorting out the inside and maybe coming to terms with it in terms of this existence. Remember, this puzzle is going on many hundred, well, just say 50 years, but 100 years more than that, hundreds of years. And it's something there to be discovered as opposed to being secret, hidden away, because they leave us so many clues. It ties everything together. So I hope people who are listening, and just as a look down, it's 24 watching, which is 24 is 888. So 8, that's why 42 is significant. 888 is 24, and 24 backwards is 42, which, as I say, is not the answer to everything. In gematria, you always take away the 0. That's a standard set fast rule. You take away the 0 and drop the 0. Well, with 42, you can add the 0, and then we have a context. I often ask people, where do you think this association with 42 and cannabis comes from? People are very short for an answer, and what I given it a context, it'll be 420 years since the dodo was disc covered. So I say they picked the date 1598 specifically because that's when everything changed. That's when conditions stopped to being as how they were, and everything changed. And greater powers at play here. And the 420 was always picked as a time for the relaunch of Earth Mark II. 420 years from 1598 to 2018. 2018, 2 plus 8 plus 1 is 11. Any other different connections to 11? That's what we're all about, isn't it? Getting from 9 to 11. And now we can define 11 in a real sense, but it'll always be in terms of the H. Remember, if you look at the 11, you still have the separation. So there's no crossbar there. There is no connecting between the unities. That's where the H and the theta comes in. All these things are there for consideration. I'm sure you won't get any help from most people. I hope the chat is going all right. I'm just chatting away, and I'm sure to most people it's not. Yeah, they never deal. Mark Taylor still has to deal with my Milky Way on the moon find. He just doesn't understand the concept. So he hasn't bothered to try and make the comparison himself to see if there's any truth in that. So once you do make the comparison, see there is truth in that, then you can go about trying to explain it. But first of all, you have to show yourself that there is validity in the claim, because it's not something you can easily wrap your head around, Mark. Once you confirm that 100%, you won't offer up any explanation. The only explanation I can imagine you'll offer up, like the rest of astronomy and physics worldwide, is like sliced barcanes. Well, if that is the case, he said, we can put that down to one of the wonders of the universe, one of those strange, strange things, and we'll dwell on it for a month or so, and then we leave it behind. That's the best you can do. Whereas I've offered up a much more tangible and a much more realistic, in a fantastical sense, explanation for the reason you can find the Milky Way as a swathe on the moon between craters Eratosthenes and Eudoxus. Eratosthenes, just again, Eratosthenes, I knew he didn't exist. So within the lie is truth encoded. Well, the ball earthers always jump to Eratosthenes, was the first guy who thousands and thousands of years ago, who proved that the earth was flat, or the earth was a spinning ball. So I knew he didn't exist, and within the lie, truth would be encoded. We know the earth is flat and stationary. So yeah, Eratosthenes is sees not earth. So when I made that anagram, and it's a perfect anagram, I knew it was perfect. The complete opposite of the truth, because describing the earth as a spherical ball is definitely someone who sees not earth, because the earth is not a spherical ball. The earth is a fucking dodo, man. So anyway, so that swathe spans from Eratosthenes to Eudoxus, EUDXOS, or an anagram, perfect anagram of U, just the letter U, Exodus. So I think it's just like everything else. It was written to be discovered, and pretty telling in itself. The two craters that are clear, they're clearly the craters you would pick for the beginning and the end of this swathe. So once you see that the Milky Way is a match for it, it's a match by multiple points and multiple points of comparison. As I said, just get yourself the best Milky Way representation out there, get yourself the highest definition, and the same with the moon, and make the comparison yourself. RNFE I've verified it myself 100%, and RNFE has said he's done the same, and I know We Are Waking Up says he's done the same as well. So it's there for everyone to do that. Then you can worry about an explanation for it, because it'll take a bit of thinking. I've offered that as well, and you can take it or leave it. My best guess at the minute. Not my best guess, my best position at the minute. The moon doesn't exist. We're looking at a template. We're looking at the interface of the sun as it is reflected off of the watery contoured barrier above. So what I say about the sun not being hot or cold, these are effects. The sun it comes, it goes, it creates the effect that we associate with heat and light. But these are just effects of the sun's frequencies as they interact with the environment that we are in. And yes, above the Earth's atmosphere, the sun's rays have no interference to pass through. So they can be either described as cold or hot. No water particulates that are everywhere to be excited. And yeah, so when these direct rays hit off the opposite side of the contoured barrier, when it's positioned in a certain position, then we have the full moon. So it's for reflection of the face of the sun. But because these energies are reflecting off of a particular barrier, which is infinite, if you want to say it, infinite cold waters beyond, this reflected light is going to pick up some of the properties of the reflected medium, This is why we experience what we experience regarding moonlight. Again, everything is part of a broken system, which is in a state of repair. But that's what we're seeing when we look at the moon. We're looking at the interface of the sun. And the reason the Milky Way is to be found on the moon on this reflection is because the stars themselves are this interface as it is displayed out against this contoured barrier. Yeah, that's my best explanation. And as I said, forget about that for now. First of all, make that comparison yourself and make sure that you clarify that indeed one and the other are part and parcel of the same. Then you can go about explaining it. And ball earthers are last. Flat earthers are going to have a difficult time explaining it. And well, yeah, again, I'm sticking to my explanation, but you have to accept so much. I say that the sun is a giant decapitated tree, slime tree of massive proportions. We found the North Center. And it's from here the energies are emanating, reflecting off of we see the sun as the sun, we see it as a reflection. And it's an observer-dependent reflection as well. And yeah, there's no need to invoke 4D or anything like that. It just goes around and around. We just have to settle on the shape and nature of the circuit. We can go to math, we can go to science for that. Only observations tell us that, you know, if the sun is stationary, the earth travels in an elliptical fashion around the sun. Well, just reverse that. The earth is stationary, the sun travels in an elliptical fashion, and you just need the proper intercontinental scaled layout to fall back on. The contour of the barrier is vital as well, and this determines everything about what we see when we look at the night sky. So it's all about the sun. And we've been told that in many different places, up to and including that Walt Disney movie actually with Alice in Wonderland, where they gelled the two books together. But there, in the cold light of day, you see the moon and the sun, and even the walrus and the carpenter tell us that they're part and parcel of the same thing. The sun and the moon are one and the same. All they're being is the energies emanating from the North Center. Which manifests as the sun and all its reflected artifacts. So yeah, I'm not sure how the what do you call it went. I'm pretty sure no one talks about the stuff I'm talking about anyway, but I can't worry about that. I should definitely get down on a few of the things I wanted to deal with. One of them was pretty big. I knew Obama was a Sama. That was an easy one. That was a gimme. But I didn't know there was another layer to it. So there's another layer to it, and that sort of ties everything together and then makes sense of all of that. Unbelievable as that's going to come across, but it's too late here to do that. So I'm going to come back on soon and definitely have that template ready. I'll find the word for it as well. Template doesn't seem good enough. You know, it's just all the letters, all the numbers are all found within it. So it's a collection of a few symbols, a minimal couple of symbols together, all with significant and ultimate significant meaning, and then everything is extrapolated from that. So yeah, okay. On that note, it's a meeting place more than anything else, isn't it? I'm not sure how the no wrenches is working. Probably not working too well and scaring a lot of people off. The likes of Tesla Truth, how you doing, man? I mean, you could well do without the likes of Mark Taylor here and many of the others. Some of the others anyway, because you're sort of, you know, you're looking at this with a studious mind, and you understand that there is a code to it all, and you're trying to figure it out. But yeah, maybe I'll have a read through the chat after I finish just to see how it went. Maybe change approach next time. So on that note, usual waffle when I think about it. But sure, what can you do? Again, I tried to hint at a lot of things that I've spoken about before, and once you get to this stage, I guess, because the puzzle is still live, all of these things play into the puzzle, but you don't dwell on the things too much, even though a lot of them could do with some dwelling upon. So, yeah, once again, I'll say thanks a lot for tuning in, and I'll leave you with the usual, the parting glass. Take it easy, and well to all. Oh yeah, don't forget about the Borgias, that piece of music. I'll be definitely listen to that again. And if you have anything to say about that, that'd be cool. So anyway, the parting glass. Of all the money that I spent it in good company. And all the harm that I did, alas, it was to none but me. No, and for want to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night, and joy be with you all. If I had money enough to spend and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in town that sorely has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks, her ruby lips, my own, she has my heart in thrall. Oh, flow to me the parting glass. Good night, and joy be with you all. Oh, of all the comrades that e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they wish me one more day to stay. Since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I will gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night, and joy be with you all. I will gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night, and joy be with you all. Good night, friends. I love you, Steve.